can't believe she's graduating. Mom, we need to go. Why? What's happening? Just come with me, please. I needed to be there. The dean was very funny. But she didn't even look. You shouldn't be here.
Don't go near her.
I just wanted to see her graduate.
You shouldn't be back here. We'll fix this.
Mom, principal, what's going on? You can't be here, Mom.
My daughter didn't tell me I wasn't welcome at my granddaughter's graduation. She did something worse. Melissa took my arm, walked me past the family row, and placed me in a folding chair behind a stone pillar. "You'll be more comfortable here, Mom," she whispered. From that seat, I could barely see the stage where Lily would receive her diploma. Then I noticed my original seat wasn't empty. One of my son-in-law's business contacts was sitting in it. I almost left. But just as the ceremony was about to begin, Principal William Harris entered the auditorium. He greeted several important guests, glanced across the room, and suddenly stopped when he saw me. Then he walked straight past my daughter and came directly toward me. Before I tell you what he said, if you've ever been made to feel invisible by someone you love, please like this video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. The morning of Lily's graduation began long before I found myself sitting behind that pillar. I woke at 5:30, although my alarm was set for 7. For a few moments I stayed beneath the covers and listened to the quiet sounds of my house in Richmond. The old maple tree outside my bedroom window brushed against the siding whenever the wind picked up. Somewhere downstairs the refrigerator hummed. Everything felt ordinary. But that day wasn't ordinary to me. My granddaughter was graduating from high school. I had been waiting for that morning almost as eagerly as Lily had. On the chair beside my bed hung the navy blue dress I had chosen 3 weeks earlier. It wasn't expensive. Melissa would probably have called it practical, which had become one of those words she used when she wanted to criticize something without sounding cruel. But I liked it. More importantly, Lily liked it. When I had shown her a photograph of it, she had smiled and said, "Grandma, wear that one. Blue looks beautiful on you." So blue it was, after showering. I stood in front of my dresser and opened the small wooden jewelry box that had belonged to my mother. Inside was a pearl brooch shaped like a tiny branch. My husband Thomas had given it to me on our 30th wedding anniversary. He had been gone 8 years. There were still mornings when I reached toward his side of the bed before remembering. I pinned the brooch carefully above my heart. "You should be here today," I whispered. Thomas would have adored watching Lily graduate. She had been 6 when he died, but somehow she still remembered the way he whistled while making pancakes and how he let her sprinkle far too many chocolate chips into the batter. After he was gone, Lily and I became even closer. Melissa had returned to work full-time when Lily was 7. Her real estate career was beginning to grow, and there were open houses, evening appointments, inspections, and clients who apparently believed property emergencies could happen at any hour. Ryan traveled often for consulting work, so Lily came to me. At first it was 2 afternoons a week, then 3. Eventually my little house became her second home. I picked her up from elementary school in my silver Buick, the same Buick Melissa would later suggest I replace because it made me look older than I was. Lily never cared. She would climb into the passenger seat, throw her backpack onto the floor, and immediately begin telling me everything that had happened. "Grandma, you will not believe what Madison said today." Or, "Grandma, I got a 97 on my spelling test." Or sometimes simply, "Can we get ice cream?" We had a routine. Homework first, snack second, then she was free. Since I had spent 34 years working as a public school librarian, books naturally became part of our afternoons. When Lily was 8, we read Charlotte's Web together. At 10, she discovered mysteries. At 12, she decided history was boring until I showed her that history was really just millions of human stories stitched together. By 14, she was borrowing books from my shelves without asking. By 16, she was recommending books to me. Those years were some of the happiest of my life. I watched her grow from a child with missing front teeth into a thoughtful young woman who could disagree with you without becoming disrespectful. She had her mother's determination, but thankfully not Melissa's growing obsession with appearances. At least I hoped not. Around 7 that graduation morning, I went downstairs and made coffee. On the kitchen table sat Lily's gift. It was wrapped in cream-colored paper with a blue ribbon. Inside was a fountain pen that had belonged to Thomas. It wasn't particularly valuable, but Lily had admired it since she was a little girl. Thomas had used that pen to write birthday cards, grocery lists, letters, and notes he left for me on the refrigerator. After his death, I kept it in his desk. When Lily was 15, she once picked it up and said Grandpa had really nice handwriting. He practiced, I told her. She laughed. People practiced handwriting. We also survived without Wi-Fi. She had rolled her eyes and hugged me. I wanted her to have the pen as she began the next chapter of her life. I tucked a handwritten note into the box. Use this to write a life that belongs to you. Love always, Grandma. At 7:23, my phone rang. It was Lily. Grandma, you're supposed to be getting ready. I am getting ready. You sound like you're running. I'm trying to find one shoe. I laughed. That sounds about right. Then her voice softened. You're coming, right? The question surprised me. Of course I'm coming. I know. I just wanted to hear you say it. Lily, nothing could keep me away today. Promise, I promise. There was a pause. Good. Before I could ask why she sounded worried, someone called her name in the background. That's Mom. I have to go. I love you. I love you too. The call ended. I stood there for a moment holding the phone. Something about the conversation bothered me. Not enough to frighten me. Just enough to stay in my thoughts. At 9:15, I left home. The graduation was being held in the main auditorium of Lily's private school, a beautiful campus west of downtown Richmond, with brick buildings, white columns, enormous oak trees, and tuition that still made me shake my head whenever I thought about it. Cars already lined the entrance when I arrived. I parked farther away than I expected and walked toward the auditorium carrying Lily's gift. Families were everywhere, mothers fixing graduation gowns, fathers taking photographs, grandparents moving carefully through the crowd, younger siblings complaining about the heat. For several minutes, I simply enjoyed watching them. Graduations have always affected me. Perhaps it was because I had spent most of my life in education. Every diploma looks like a piece of paper until you understand how many mornings, mistakes, sacrifices, arguments, second chances, teachers, parents, and sleepless nights are folded invisibly inside it. I had just reached the entrance when I heard my name. Edith. Melissa was coming toward me. She looked beautiful. My daughter had always been beautiful. Her dark blonde hair fell neatly to her shoulders, and she wore a pale cream dress with matching heels. Everything about her looked polished. She hugged me quickly. You made it. Of course I did. Her eyes immediately traveled down my dress. For half a second I recognized that familiar inspection. Then she noticed the brooch. You wore Dad's pearls. Just the brooch. She touched it gently. For one brief moment something softened in her expression. He would have loved today. Yes, I said. He would. Then Ryan appeared behind her. He wore a tailored navy suit despite the June heat. Edith. Good to see you. He kissed my cheek, but his attention was already somewhere behind me. A tall man and his wife were approaching. Ryan's entire posture changed. There they are. Melissa turned. Immediately she smiled. Not the smile she had given me. A brighter one. A professional one. Mom, this is Charles Whitman and his wife Rebecca. Charles and Ryan have been discussing a project together. We exchanged polite greetings. Within 30 seconds, Melissa was explaining that Charles's daughter was also graduating. I noticed something else. The Whitmans were following us inside. When we entered the auditorium, an usher checked my ticket. Family section row C, she said. I looked at the ticket. Row C. Good. I followed Melissa down the center aisle. The family section was excellent, perhaps 10 rows from the stage. Ryan's parents were already seated there. His sister and her husband sat beside them. There were several empty chairs. I began moving toward one. Melissa caught my elbow. Mom, actually, wait. I stopped. What? She glanced toward Ryan, then toward Charles and Rebecca Whitman. We had to adjust the seating a little. Adjust it. Nothing major. She smiled, but there was tension around her mouth. Come with me. She guided me back toward the aisle. I looked over my shoulder. There was an empty chair beside Ryan's mother, another beside his sister, and one directly behind them. Melissa, there are seats here. They're reserved. For whom, Mom? She lowered her voice. Please, not today. Those 3 words changed something inside me. Not today. As though I were already causing trouble simply by asking where I was supposed to sit. I followed her. We moved farther toward the side of the auditorium. The seats became less crowded. Then I saw it. A folding chair positioned near one of the large decorative stone pillars supporting the balcony above. Melissa stopped beside it. This should be comfortable. I stared at the chair, then at the pillar. From where I stood, nearly half the stage disappeared behind it. You want me to sit here? It's only for the ceremony. I can barely see the stage. You can see most of it. Melissa. She exhaled. People were passing behind us, so she leaned closer. Ryan has some important people here today. The seating became complicated. I looked back toward row C. Charles Whitman was sitting down, in the seat beside Ryan's mother, the seat I had been walking toward. Suddenly, the situation wasn't complicated at all. It was painfully simple. My daughter had removed me from the family row so her husband could seat a business contact there. I looked at Melissa. Was that my seat? Her eyes flickered away. Mom, please don't make this into something. I asked you a question. It's Lily's graduation. I know whose graduation it is. Then can we just focus on her? For several seconds I couldn't speak. Around us, families laughed and took pictures. Somewhere near the stage, a piano was being tested. A woman 2 rows away was pinning a flower onto her husband's jacket. Ordinary happy moments continued everywhere, while I stood there realizing my daughter was embarrassed to have me sitting beside her. I could have confronted her. I could have walked back to row C and demanded the seat printed on my ticket. Instead, I looked at Lily's wrapped gift in my hands. Nothing could keep me away today. I had promised. So I sat down behind the pillar. Melissa touched my shoulder. Thank you for understanding. I almost laughed. Understanding. That word can hide a remarkable amount of cruelty. She hurried back toward her guests. I sat alone. Then I noticed an elderly couple across the aisle looking at me. The woman gave me a small, sympathetic smile. I turned toward the stage. If I leaned slightly to my left, I could see the podium. If I leaned right, I could see part of the student seating area. Maybe that would be enough. Then the graduates began entering through a side door. Rows of blue gowns filled the auditorium. I searched desperately for Lily. For a second I saw her face. She was smiling. Then the pillar swallowed her from view. Something tightened in my throat. I stood. Maybe I could find another seat somewhere in the back. Maybe I should simply leave before anyone noticed how foolish I felt. Then applause began near the entrance. I turned. Dr. William Harris, the school principal, had entered the auditorium with several board members. He shook hands as he moved through the VIP section. Melissa noticed him. She stood immediately. Ryan stood too. William approached their row. Melissa smiled and stepped into the aisle as though expecting him to stop. He didn't. He glanced past her. His eyes moved across the room. Then they landed on me. William stopped walking. The warmth disappeared from his expression. He looked at me, then at the pillar, then back toward Melissa. And without saying a word to her, the principal changed direction and started walking straight toward me. There had been a time when Melissa would have been the first person to tell anyone exactly what I did for a living. When she was 9 years old, her 3rd-grade teacher asked the class to write a paragraph about someone they admired. Most children chose athletes, singers, presidents, or their fathers. Melissa chose me. My mother works in a school library, she wrote. She helps children find stories when they do not know what they need yet. I still had that paper. It was folded inside a cedar box upstairs in my bedroom, written in purple pencil, with several misspelled words and a crooked heart at the bottom. For years I believed the woman Melissa became would always remember the little girl who wrote it. I was wrong. The change did not happen suddenly. That was what made it so difficult to recognize. If my daughter had awakened one morning and announced that my house embarrassed her, my clothes embarrassed her, my career embarrassed her, I would have confronted her immediately. Instead, it happened one small correction at a time. After college, Melissa worked for a modest real estate office in Richmond. She was ambitious from the beginning. I admired that about her. Thomas and I had never raised her to apologize for wanting more. We wanted her to have opportunities we had not had. When Melissa was growing up, money was often tight. Thomas worked as an electrical supervisor for the city. I worked in public schools. We paid our bills, kept food on the table, took a modest vacation most summers, and managed to save a little. But there were no luxury cars, no country clubs, no designer clothes. When Melissa wanted an expensive pair of shoes in high school, I told her we could buy the shoes or pay for the summer academic program she wanted to attend, but not both. She chose the program. Years later, she told me that decision had helped her get into college. I thought she understood what sacrifice meant. For a while, she did. Then her career took off. Melissa discovered that she had a talent for selling expensive homes because she understood people almost as well as she understood houses. She knew when to speak. She knew when to stay silent. She knew which kitchen detail mattered to a nervous buyer and which neighborhood fact could turn hesitation into desire. By 35, she was working with clients who bought homes worth more than Thomas and I had earned in decades. I was proud of her, truly proud. The first time her photograph appeared in a local business magazine, I bought 3 copies. I mailed one to my sister. Melissa laughed when she found out. "Mom, you know it's basically an advertisement, right? It still has your face in it. You're impossible." She hugged me when she said it. Back then, success had not yet made her afraid of where she came from. The first sign was probably my car. My Buick was 11 years old at the time, but it was reliable, clean, and fully paid for. One afternoon, I drove to Melissa's office to bring her a folder she had forgotten at my house. When I pulled into the parking lot, she came outside quickly. "You should have called me," she said. "I did." "No, I mean I could have come to you." I handed her the folder. Then I noticed her looking toward my car. "What, nothing?" "Melissa." She sighed. "Have you thought about getting something newer? Why, that car is getting old. It has 68,000 miles. I'm just saying you deserve something nicer." At the time, I thought it was concern. A few months later, she suggested a new car again before a charity dinner she had invited me to. Then again, before Lily's school fundraiser. That was when I realized she wasn't worried about the engine. She was worried about the parking lot. The clothes came next. For my 65th birthday, Melissa gave me a beautiful wool coat. It was far more expensive than anything I would have bought myself. I thanked her sincerely. Then she added, "Now you have something appropriate for client events." I remember looking at her. "Your client events?" "You know what I mean." I did. I simply wished I didn't. Soon there were shoes, a handbag, a silk scarf. A dress she said was more flattering. Each gift arrived wrapped in affection, but carrying the same quiet message. Improve this. Replace that. Become slightly less recognizable. The strangest part was that I never considered myself badly dressed. I liked simple things, clean lines, comfortable shoes, good fabrics that lasted. I had spent 34 years working around children, books, glue sticks, spilled juice, dusty shelves, and temperamental photocopiers. I had never needed a wardrobe designed for cocktail parties. Melissa began inviting me to fewer events anyway. When she did invite me, I noticed she introduced me differently. "This is my mother, Edith. She's retired." That was all. Once at a dinner, a woman named Patricia asked what I had retired from. Before I could answer, Melissa said, "Education." Technically true, but oddly vague. "I was a school librarian," I said. Patricia smiled. "Oh, how wonderful. My mother was a teacher." We immediately began talking about schools. I enjoyed the conversation. Melissa did not. On the drive home, she said, "Mom, you don't have to tell everyone your entire employment history." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She asked, "I know, but sometimes you overshare." I said 5 words. You know what I mean. No, I didn't. Or perhaps I did, and I simply wasn't ready to admit it. Ryan was subtler. He rarely criticized me directly. Instead, he joked. When I arrived at their house one Thanksgiving in my Buick, he looked through the window and said, "That thing is going to qualify for historic plates soon." Everyone laughed. So did I. Another time he came to my house and noticed that I still had the same kitchen cabinets Thomas and I had installed 15 years earlier. "You know your daughter could get you a good contractor," he said. "There's nothing wrong with my cabinets. I admire the commitment to vintage." He smiled when he said it. Ryan always smiled. That made it easy to pretend nothing hurt. Lily was different. She never inspected me. She never corrected me. She never seemed to notice that my home was smaller than hers. In fact, she preferred it. At my house, she could leave a book on the sofa without someone moving it, because guests might come over. She could eat soup at the kitchen table in sweatpants. She could sit barefoot on the back porch. When she was 17, she told me, "Your house feels like somewhere people actually live." I knew exactly what she meant. I also knew better than to repeat it to Melissa. The year before graduation, the difference between mother and daughter became increasingly obvious. Lily began talking about college social work education and nonprofit programs. Melissa kept suggesting business. Something practical, she called it. One Sunday afternoon, all 3 of us were in my kitchen when Lily mentioned she might minor in history. Melissa groaned. "Your grandmother has infected you." Lily laughed. "There are worse things." Melissa opened my refrigerator and frowned at the containers inside. "Mom, you still save these. They're perfectly good containers. They're takeout containers. And you can afford actual storage containers." I looked at Lily. Lily looked at me. Neither of us said anything. After Melissa left, Lily washed one of those containers and deliberately placed it back in my cabinet. "That one is now a family heirloom," she announced. I laughed until my eyes watered. That was Lily. She could make something small feel harmless again. But in the months leading up to graduation, Melissa became more particular than usual. 3 weeks before the ceremony, she called me. "What are you wearing?" "Clothes, hopefully." "Mom." "My navy dress. The one with the little buttons." "No, the newer one." She asked me to send a picture. I did. She approved. 2 days later, she asked whether I planned to get my hair done professionally. I planned to brush it. Very funny. "Melissa, why are you so concerned about my hair?" "I just want everyone to look nice for pictures." "Everyone." I let it go. Then she asked about shoes, then my handbag, then whether I would drive myself or ride with someone. That last question bothered me. Why wouldn't I drive? Parking will be difficult. I can walk. You know what, we'll figure it out. A week before graduation. Lily came to my house after school. She was restless. She wandered around my kitchen, opened the refrigerator, closed it, then sat across from me. "You're excited, right?" I asked. "I think so." "You think so?" "It's weird. Everyone keeps acting like graduation is this giant finish line, but it doesn't feel like I'm finishing anything." "That's because you aren't." She looked at me. "You're beginning something." "That sounds like something you used to put on library posters." It probably was. She smiled. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. "You'll be there." "Of course. Even if Mom gets weird." That caught my attention. "What does that mean?" Lily immediately looked down. "Nothing." "Lily, she's just stressed. About graduation, about everything being perfect." I studied my granddaughter's face. "Has she said something about me?" "No." The answer came too quickly. I didn't push. Lily loved her mother. I would never force her to choose sides. So I squeezed her hand. "I'll be there." She looked relieved. That relief stayed with me. It stayed with me when Melissa called again 2 days before graduation to confirm what I was wearing. It stayed with me when she reminded me that several important families would attend. And it stayed with me on graduation morning when Lily called before 7:30, just to make me promise one more time. Nothing could keep me away today. That was what I told her. Sitting behind that pillar later, I finally understood why she had needed to hear it. Perhaps Lily had sensed something I had refused to see. Perhaps she had noticed her mother slowly moving me toward the edges, long before Melissa physically moved my chair. And now, as I watched Principal William Harris walking across the auditorium toward me, another memory returned. 3 nights before graduation, Melissa had called me one final time. After discussing parking and arrival times, she had casually said something I barely noticed then. "Mom, there will be some very important people there. Just remember that." At the time, I had answered with a joke. But sitting behind that pillar, I understood. Melissa had not been worried that I would miss Lily's graduation. She had been worried that I would be seen at it. And whatever William Harris was about to say, judging by the expression on my daughter's face as she watched him approach me, Melissa was beginning to realize that hiding me might have been the worst possible choice she could have made. 3 nights before Lily's graduation, I learned that my seat behind the pillar had not been an accident. I only wish I had understood it at the time. Melissa had invited me to dinner at her house that Wednesday evening. She called it a small family meal before graduation weekend. But the moment I pulled into her driveway, I knew family was only part of the reason. There were 6 cars parked outside. None belonged to relatives. Melissa and Ryan lived in a large brick colonial in one of those Richmond neighborhoods where every lawn seemed to have been measured with a ruler. The hedges were trimmed into perfect lines. The porch furniture changed with the seasons. Even their mailbox looked expensive. I parked my Buick near the curb. Before I reached the front door, Melissa opened it. "You're early, by 4 minutes." "I know, come in." She kissed my cheek and immediately glanced over my shoulder toward the street. For one ridiculous second, I wondered whether she was checking where I had parked. Then I told myself not to be unkind. Inside, I heard voices from the dining room. I thought this was family dinner. It mostly is. Mostly. That should have warned me. Ryan appeared carrying a bottle of wine. "Edith, perfect timing." "For what?" He laughed as though I had made a joke. "For dinner." Then Melissa explained. 2 couples joining us had children graduating with Lily. One of them was Charles and Rebecca Whitman, the same couple I would later see sitting in the family section. Charles ran a regional development company. Ryan had been trying to build a consulting relationship with him for months. The second couple, Andrew and Caroline Foster, owned several commercial properties around Richmond and were considering selling one. That made them interesting to Melissa. Suddenly, the dinner made sense. It wasn't a celebration before graduation. It was networking with roast chicken. I didn't mind. People build careers through relationships. Melissa worked hard and I had never resented her ambition. What bothered me was how differently she behaved when certain people entered the room. Her voice changed slightly. Her laughter became brighter. Even her posture seemed different. When Rebecca Whitman complimented the dining room chandelier, Melissa gave a 5-minute explanation of the designer who had made it. I remembered Thomas installing the light above our kitchen table himself, while standing on a chair I repeatedly told him was unsafe. Our chandelier had cost $79. It had illuminated 30 years of dinners just fine. I smiled at the memory. "What are you smiling about, Mom?" Melissa asked. "Your father." Her expression tightened almost invisibly. "What about him?" "Nothing important, just remembering him fixing things around the house." Rebecca smiled. "My husband can barely change a light bulb." Charles raised his glass. "That's why God invented contractors." Everyone laughed. I did too. Melissa relaxed. For a while, dinner went smoothly. Then Caroline Foster asked how long I had lived in Richmond. "Most of my adult life." "And what did you do before retirement?" I saw Melissa look at me. It was subtle. A tiny warning. I ignored it. "I was a public school librarian for 34 years. Caroline's face brightened. "My sister teaches middle school." "Then your sister deserves a medal and possibly a vacation." Caroline laughed. We began talking about schools. I told her how libraries had changed during my career, how children who claimed they hated reading often simply had not found the right book yet. Charles joined the conversation. "My daughter was like that." "What changed?" "A teacher gave her some fantasy series when she was 12, there you go." For 5 minutes I forgot Melissa was watching me. Then I mentioned that Lily used to spend afternoons at my library when she was younger. "She practically grew up between bookshelves," I said. Melissa interrupted. Mom helped occasionally when Lily was little. Occasionally. I looked at her. She reached for her wine. For almost 10 years, I had picked Lily up several days a week. I had fed her, helped with homework, attended parent meetings when Melissa couldn't get away, taken her to doctor appointments, and sat beside her through childhood fevers. Occasionally. I could have corrected Melissa. I didn't. That evening wasn't about winning small arguments. After dinner, the guests moved into the living room for coffee. I helped carry plates into the kitchen. Melissa followed. You don't have to do that. I know. She lowered her voice. Dinner went well. I'm glad. Charles really liked you. The statement surprised me. Was he not supposed to, Mom? I'm teasing. She smiled, but only briefly. Then she looked toward the living room. Tomorrow is going to be a lot bigger than this. Graduation is Friday. You know what I mean. There will be a lot of important people there. I dried my hands. They're all there to watch 18-year-olds graduate, Melissa. You always do that. Do what, act like status doesn't exist. I stared at her. I know it exists. I simply don't worship it. Her face changed. I regretted the sentence immediately. Not because it was false, because I knew exactly where it would land. I don't worship anything, she said. I didn't say you did. You implied it. Before I could respond, Rebecca entered carrying 2 glasses. Where should these go? Melissa immediately smiled. Right here is perfect. The conversation ended. Later, when the guests were leaving, I noticed Ryan walking Charles toward the driveway. They stood beside Charles's car for several minutes. When Ryan returned, he looked pleased. That went very well. Melissa touched his arm. I told you it would. I gathered my purse. Thank you for dinner. You're leaving already? Melissa asked. It's almost 10. Wait, I have some leftovers for you. I almost told her I had food at home, but she was already in the kitchen. I followed. She packed chicken into a container and began discussing graduation logistics. Doors open at 9:30. The ceremony starts at 11. Family should arrive early. I'll be there by 10. Earlier would be better. Fine. Parking might be difficult. We've discussed this. I know. Then came the sentence I would remember later. Mom, there will be some very important people there. Just remember that. I looked at her. Remember what? She hesitated. Just that graduation is a big event for Lily. I'm aware. I don't want anything awkward. What exactly are you expecting me to do? Nothing. Then why are we having this conversation? Her jaw tightened. We're not. Forget I said anything. I took the leftovers. Good night, Melissa. Good night. I had reached the foyer when I realized I had left my reading glasses on the kitchen counter. I turned back without calling out. As I approached the kitchen, I heard voices. Ryan and Melissa. I stopped when I heard my name. Your mother will be fine, Ryan said. I know, you're overthinking it. She gets talking. So you saw her tonight. School's library stories about when Lily was little. Charles doesn't need the entire family history. Ryan laughed softly. He seemed to like her. That's not the point. Then what is... There was silence. When Melissa spoke again, her voice was lower. I just want Friday to look right. I felt something cold move through me. Ryan answered. We can control the seating. How? Put the Whitmans with us. Your mom can sit on the side. She'll notice. Then tell her the family section filled up. She has a family ticket. Melissa, it's one ceremony. She'll survive. I stood motionless in the hallway. Suddenly, every question about my dress, my shoes, my hair, and my car became part of the same picture. I should have walked into that kitchen. I should have made them look me in the face and explain why a retired librarian was too embarrassing to sit beside them. Instead, I quietly stepped backward. My glasses could wait. I left the house without saying goodbye again. Driving home, I felt more sad than angry. That surprised me. Anger would have been easier. Anger gives you somewhere to put the pain. Sadness simply sits beside you. At a red light, I looked at my hands resting on the steering wheel. Those hands had packed Melissa's school lunches. They had sewn costumes when I couldn't afford to buy them. They had signed college tuition checks. They had held her when her first boyfriend broke her heart. And somehow, decades later, the woman attached to those hands had become something she needed to position carefully at public events. When I got home, there was an email waiting for me. The sender made me sit straighter. Office of the Principal, Richmond Heritage Academy. The message was short. Dear Mrs. Hunter, Dr. Harris asked that we confirm whether you will be attending Friday's graduation ceremony. We understand schedules can change, but he would greatly appreciate confirmation of your attendance. Warm regards, Office of the Principal. I read it twice, then a third time. Why would William Harris care whether one student's grandmother attended? Of course, William knew me, but our connection was not something Melissa knew about. Very few people did. I clicked reply. Yes, I will be attending. I wouldn't miss my granddaughter's graduation. I almost added a question. Why do you ask? Instead, I deleted it. If William needed something, he would tell me. The following morning, Lily called. She sounded nervous. You're still coming tomorrow, absolutely. Promise, I promise. I wanted to ask whether she knew anything about the seating. I didn't. I refused to put my granddaughter between her mother and me. After we hung up, I reopened the principal's email. There was something unusual about it. Not the wording, the timing. William Harris had never personally checked whether I would attend a school event before. And he certainly didn't know that Melissa and Ryan were planning to move me out of the family section. At least I didn't think he did. So why was my presence important enough for the principal himself to confirm? I closed my laptop and looked toward the framed photograph of Thomas on the bookshelf. Well, I whispered, Friday may be more interesting than I expected. I had no idea how right I was, because while Melissa was planning where to hide me, William Harris was quietly making plans of his own. And unlike my daughter, the principal knew exactly who Edith Hunter was. There was a reason William Harris knew exactly who Edith Hunter was. It had nothing to do with Lily. At least not in the beginning. 7 years earlier, I had been sitting at the same kitchen table where Lily had done hundreds of homework assignments when I opened an article in the Richmond newspaper and read about a family I had never met. The father had died unexpectedly. The mother had been left with 3 children, medical bills, and a mortgage she could barely manage. Their oldest son attended a private high school on partial financial aid, but even with that assistance, his mother could no longer afford the remaining tuition. He withdrew halfway through the school year. The article was not specifically about that boy. He was only one example in a larger story about families whose children were caught between financial hardship and educational opportunity. But I could not stop thinking about him. Thomas had been gone for a little over a year then. Grief had changed the rhythm of my life. People imagine grief as constant crying. Mine was quieter. It was reaching for 2 coffee mugs instead of 1. It was hearing something funny on the radio and turning toward an empty passenger seat. It was receiving the electric bill and remembering Thomas always complained that I left too many lights on. Most of all, it was having no one with whom to discuss the little decisions that make up a life. Thomas and I had always believed education mattered. Not because a diploma guaranteed success, it didn't. But education could give a person choices. Thomas used to say, a child with choices has somewhere to go when life closes a door. We had tried to give Melissa those choices. We saved for college before we replaced our kitchen. We drove old cars. We took modest vacations. When Melissa was accepted into the summer academic program, she desperately wanted Thomas worked overtime for 6 weeks. She never knew that. We didn't want her to feel guilty for receiving opportunities. That was the point of sacrifice. You carried the weight so your child didn't have to. After Thomas died, I inherited a piece of land in Hanover County from my aunt. It wasn't enormous, but development had expanded toward the area, and the property was worth considerably more than anyone in my family had expected. When I sold it, the check frightened me. I had never held that much money at once. My financial advisor suggested several options. Invest more aggressively, buy a newer home, travel, replace my car. That last suggestion would have pleased Melissa. For a while I considered traveling. Thomas and I had once planned to visit Italy. He wanted Rome, I wanted Florence. We used to argue playfully about which city deserved more days, but the idea of taking that trip without him felt wrong, so the money remained mostly untouched. Then I read that newspaper article. I sat at my kitchen table until the coffee beside me went cold. The next morning I called Richmond Heritage Academy. Lily had only recently begun attending the school. Melissa and Ryan had chosen it because of its academic reputation. I knew the tuition was substantial, but until then I had never thought much about what happened when a family could afford that tuition one year and suddenly couldn't the next. I asked to speak with someone responsible for financial aid. Eventually, I was connected to an administrator. I asked a simple question. What happens when a student's family experiences a crisis in the middle of the school year? The answer was complicated. The school had financial aid programs, but budgets were set in advance. Emergency assistance existed, though resources were limited. Sometimes donors helped. Sometimes payment plans were arranged. Sometimes there was simply not enough money. And then the child leaves. There was a pause. Sometimes yes. That word stayed with me. Sometimes. I requested a meeting. That was how I first met Dr. William Harris. I wasn't yet principal. He was assistant head of school, a thoughtful man with silver beginning to appear at his temples and the habit of listening without interrupting. We met in a small conference room. I expected 15 minutes. We talked for nearly 2 hours. I asked how many students had withdrawn because of sudden financial hardship. What counted as an emergency? How quickly could assistance be provided? Would families be forced to disclose humiliating details? Could the money be given without students knowing where it came from? William eventually leaned back. Mrs. Hunter, may I ask what exactly you're considering? I folded my hands. I'm considering making sure fewer children have to leave school because something terrible happened to their parents. He stared at me for a moment. Then he asked how much I was thinking of contributing. I slid a piece of paper across the table. His expression changed. I will not pretend the amount meant nothing to me. It represented years of Thomas's work. It represented inherited land. It represented trips we never took and purchases I could have made. But when William looked at that number, I felt something I had not felt since Thomas died. Purpose. We spent the next several months working with attorneys in the school's financial office. Margaret Collins, chair of the school board, became involved. She was practical, careful, and initially suspicious of my insistence on privacy. Most donors at this level expect some recognition, she told me during one meeting. I don't. A named scholarship numbered, a plaque numbered, an annual donor dinner, absolutely not. Margaret smiled. May I ask why? Because a frightened 16-year-old shouldn't have to feel grateful to a stranger every time she walks past a plaque. That ended the discussion. The fund needed a legal name, however. Thomas and I had different last names for professional reasons during the early years of our marriage, but eventually I had taken Hunter, his family name. I chose Hunter Opportunity Fund. That was the only piece of us I allowed to remain visible. The rules were simple. The fund would help currently enrolled students whose families experienced genuine unexpected hardship. Death, serious illness, job loss, natural disaster, sudden financial collapse. The goal was not to reward prestige, it was continuity. A child whose world had already been shaken should not automatically lose school teachers, friends, and routine as well. Most importantly, recipients would not be told my identity. Neither would the general parent community. Only William, Margaret, the school's financial administrator, and the necessary legal professionals knew. The first student helped was a 10th grade girl whose father suffered a disabling stroke. The second was a boy whose mother lost her business after a fire. Then came another, and another. I received reports but never photographs unless families had independently given permission. I knew numbers, grades, circumstances, occasionally a thank you letter addressed simply to the donor. I kept every one. Thomas would have kept them too. The first time I received one, I sat in my kitchen and cried. Not because the student praised me, she didn't know who I was. She wrote, "Thank you for letting my life stay normal, when nothing else was normal." That sentence told me we had built the right thing. Over the years I added money when I could. Some investments performed well. I contributed part of my retirement income. Later I restructured the fund so it could continue after my death. Through all of it, I remained Edith Hunter in the same house with the same Buick and the same kitchen cabinets Ryan liked to joke about. Melissa knew I supported educational causes. Once she saw a folder from an attorney on my table. What's that charitable planning? How much are you giving away enough? She laughed. Just make sure you leave yourself enough to replace that car someday. I smiled. If she had opened the folder, she might have understood that my finances looked very different from what she assumed. But she never asked, and I never volunteered. Not because I wanted to deceive her, because I had learned something important after Thomas died. Money changes the way some people listen to you. I wanted my daughter to listen to me because I was her mother, not because she was calculating what I possessed. So I kept that part of my life private. William respected the arrangement completely. At school events, he treated me like any other grandmother. We might exchange a knowing smile or a slightly warmer handshake, but nothing more. Lily never suspected anything. Melissa certainly didn't, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Until the year Lily graduated. Something changed that spring. William called me in March. The fund is approaching a milestone, he said. How ominous. He laughed. You know what I mean. I did. The Hunter Opportunity Fund was close to helping its 50th student. William wanted the school board to acknowledge the program publicly. I agreed with one condition. My name stays out of it. Edith. William. You've been saying that for 7 years, and I've been remarkably consistent. He sighed. For now. I should have paid more attention to those last 2 words. For now. A month later, Margaret Collins sent me a handwritten note. She thanked me again and mentioned that something special was being planned around graduation. I called her immediately. Margaret. She laughed before I could continue. We're not putting your face on a banner. You'd better not. Trust us. Those are dangerous words. Still, I did. Then 3 nights before graduation, the principal's office emailed asking whether I would definitely attend. That was when I began to suspect William had something planned. But I imagined perhaps a private conversation afterward. Maybe he wanted me to meet a student. Maybe the board planned to announce the fund while preserving my anonymity. I never imagined anything larger. And I certainly never imagined that while the school administration was quietly preparing to honor something I had spent 7 years hiding, my own daughter was preparing to hide me. The irony would have made Thomas laugh. Sitting at my kitchen table the night before graduation, I opened the drawer where I kept the thank you letters. There were dozens now. I pulled out the first one. Thank you for letting my life stay normal when nothing else was normal. I ran my finger across the paper. Then I looked toward Thomas's photograph. 50, I whispered. We had almost helped 50 young people. Thomas and I had never traveled to Italy. I still drove an aging Buick. My kitchen cabinets were unfashionable. And my daughter had begun looking at those things as evidence that I had somehow failed to become impressive. But there are different ways to measure a life. Melissa measured what people could see. Thomas had taught me to measure what remained after you left the room. I returned the letter to the drawer. At that moment, I still didn't know why William Harris needed me at graduation. I only knew that whatever he was planning involved the Hunter Opportunity Fund. And there was one more thing I didn't know. The fund's 50th story was not some distant student whose name meant nothing to my family. It was connected directly to Lily. And when that truth finally came into the light, my granddaughter would understand that a conversation she thought I had forgotten had quietly changed someone's life. What happened? Nothing. I sat across from her. I worked in a school for 34 years. Do you really think nothing is going to fool me? She gave me a weak smile. It's Jasmine. I knew Jasmine Reed well enough to recognize the name immediately. She and Lily had become close during sophomore year. Jasmine was bright, funny, and unusually composed for 18. She had eaten dinner at my house several times, and once spent an entire Saturday helping me reorganize books in the spare bedroom after insisting my system made no sense. It made perfect sense. She simply didn't understand it. What happened to Jasmine? Lily stared down at her hands. She might have to leave school. I waited. Her mom's business is in trouble. Jasmine's mother, Denise, owned a small catering company. I had met her twice. She was the kind of woman who apologized for being 5 minutes late and brought homemade cookies when invited anywhere. What kind of trouble? I don't know everything. Jasmine doesn't want people knowing. Then don't tell me anything she asked you to keep private. Lily nodded. All I know is they lost some big contracts, and then something happened with their kitchen space. Her mom owes money. A lot, I think. And tuition. She can't finish paying it. Lily's voice cracked slightly. She might have to leave before graduation. I felt something tighten inside me. How soon, I don't know. Has her mother spoken with the school? Yes. They're trying to work something out. Lily finally looked at me. Grandma, she's worked so hard. I know. She has better grades than I do. That's not difficult. Lily stared at me. I smiled. She tried not to. For half a second, the tension broke. Then it returned. She already got into college, Lily said. She's supposed to graduate with us. We've talked about graduation since sophomore year. I reached across the table. Financial trouble doesn't erase what she's accomplished, but it can erase her being there. There was anger in Lily's voice now, not selfish anger. The helpless kind. What do you want to do? I asked. I don't know. That's why you're here. She nodded. I thought maybe there was some scholarship or something. There may be. I searched online. Most of them are for next year or college, or they take months. Have you spoken with anyone at school? Jasmine made me promise not to, then respect that. But doing nothing feels horrible. I understood. There are moments when someone you love is drowning close enough for you to see them, but too far away for you to reach. Lily was discovering that feeling for the first time. She looked around my kitchen. What if everybody gave a little money? Little money, everybody who's students. Families. Would Jasmine want that? Lily hesitated. Probably not. Then helping her in a way that humiliates her might make you feel useful without actually making her feel helped. Lily absorbed that. I hate when you say things that make sense. One of the privileges of old age. She leaned back. What would you do? That was the question. Not, can you help? Not, do you have money? What would you do? I looked at my granddaughter and thought about the Hunter Opportunity Fund. I thought about the exact reason Thomas and I had created it. A family doing fine until suddenly it wasn't. A child who had done nothing wrong facing the loss of school because the adults around her had been hit by circumstances they could not control. I would trust the adults responsible for helping her, I said carefully. That sounds like something adults say when they don't have an answer. Sometimes adults do have answers. We just can't always tell you what they are. She narrowed her eyes. That sounded suspicious. Drink your lemonade. Grandma. Lily. She finally took a sip. I did not promise her anything. I couldn't. The fund had procedures. I never personally selected recipients simply because I knew them. That would have undermined everything we had built. But after Lily left that evening, I stood at my kitchen window watching rain slide down the glass. Then I picked up my phone. William Harris answered on the fourth ring. Edith, William, I need to ask you something. All right. Do you have a senior facing withdrawal because of an unexpected family financial crisis? There was a pause. A long one. You know I can't discuss individual student finances. I know. Another pause. But he continued. I can tell you that we currently have an emergency assistance case under review. Does it qualify under the fund? We believe so. Then why hasn't it been approved? The amount required is larger than usual. How much larger, he told me. I walked to my desk and opened the latest financial statement for the fund. We could cover it. But doing so would reduce the emergency reserve below the level Margaret preferred. Use the fund, I said. Edith, use it. We would need board authorization because of the reserve threshold. Call Margaret. It's nearly 7. She stays up later than both of us. William laughed quietly. Then his voice softened. You know this student? I know someone who cares about the student. That's not what I asked. I know. Edith, the application should be judged exactly the same as every other one. If the family qualifies, help them. If they don't, don't. That's what we'll do. Good. And if the reserve drops, I'll replenish part of it. Silence. You've already done enough. That isn't your decision. I knew you'd say that. I smiled. Call Margaret. He did. The application was reviewed the next morning. The family qualified. By Friday, the remaining tuition was covered. I received no special details. I didn't need them. 3 days later, Lily burst through my front door. This time she did open the refrigerator. Grandma in the kitchen. She appeared holding a container of leftover soup. "You are not going to believe this. Apparently neither are you. Jasmine gets to stay." I looked down at the newspaper in front of me so she wouldn't see my face too clearly. "That's wonderful. The school found emergency funding. Then someone did their job." "No, you don't understand." She sat opposite me. Her mom thought it was over. Then the school called and said some anonymous assistance program covered what was left. Anonymous. Yes. How mysterious. Grandma. I looked at her. She was glowing. Not because she had received anything, because her friend had. That made me prouder than any grade ever had. "Jasmine cried," she said. Then I cried. Then her mom cried. "It was ridiculous. Sounds terrible." "It was," she laughed. Then she became serious. "I wish I knew who did it." "Why?" "So I could thank them." "Maybe they don't need thanks." "Everybody needs thanks." "Perhaps knowing Jasmine gets to graduate is enough." Lily studied me. For one uncomfortable second, I wondered whether she had guessed. Then she shook her head. "I don't understand people who give money anonymously. Why, if you do something that good, why wouldn't you let people know I folded my newspaper? Because sometimes being seen changes the meaning of what you're doing." She considered that. "So you think anonymous charity is better? Number public generosity can inspire other people to give. There's nothing wrong with recognition." "Then what do you mean?" "I mean kindness should still exist when nobody applauds." Lily became quiet. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket. "I'm writing that down. Don't you dare quote me without royalties." She laughed. I thought the conversation ended there. It didn't. 2 weeks later, Lily told me she had chosen the topic for her senior reflection essay. "What topic?" "Unseen kindness." I looked at her. "That sounds familiar. I stole it from an old woman." Shameless. Her essay began with Jasmine's experience. Although Lily protected her friend's privacy, she wrote about how people often celebrate visible success while overlooking the invisible acts that make success possible. Parents working second jobs, teachers staying late, neighbors delivering meals, strangers paying bills, grandparents raising children while their adult children built careers. That last example made me stop when Lily later showed me a draft. "You wrote this. Is it too sentimental?" "No." I swallowed. "It's fine. It doesn't sound fine. Sometimes fine comes with tears." She hugged me. What I didn't know then was that the senior reflection essays were reviewed by faculty members. A selection was forwarded to William Harris because he was preparing his graduation address. Several weeks later, he called me. I read Lily's essay. My stomach tightened. She didn't mention the fund, not directly. Does she know number good? "But Edith, there's something you should understand. What the story she wrote about appears to be connected to our 50th Hunter Opportunity Fund recipient." I sat down. "Jasmine. I can't officially confirm a recipient's identity." "William." He sighed. "You already know enough." I closed my eyes. 50. The milestone Margaret had mentioned. The student Lily had begged the universe to help. The anonymous kindness Lily had chosen as the subject of her final school essay. All of it had converged without my planning any of it. "Please don't turn this into something about me," I said. William was quiet. "Maybe it isn't only about you anymore. I mean it. I know. You promised anonymity, and we have honored that. Keep honoring it." Another pause. "I'll speak with Margaret." That answer did not reassure me. A week later, Margaret sent her cryptic note about something special being planned around graduation. Then came the email asking whether I would definitely attend. I should have connected everything. I didn't. Perhaps I didn't want to. I had spent 7 years making sure the Hunter Opportunity Fund remained separate from my family identity. Lily's joy was enough. Jasmine graduating was enough. 50 students continuing their education was enough. I needed no applause. But William Harris had read Lily's essay. The school board knew the fund had reached 50 students. And somewhere between those two facts, they had apparently made a decision without telling me exactly what it was. That decision was waiting for me at graduation. So was Melissa's. One person had decided I should be moved out of sight because I might embarrass her. Another had decided my presence mattered enough to confirm personally. And on graduation morning, those two decisions were about to collide in the middle of a crowded auditorium. By the time Melissa led me toward the side of the auditorium, I already knew enough to understand that what was happening was deliberate. What I did not know was how much it would hurt once I saw someone else sitting in my seat. There is something strange about humiliation. From a distance, it can sound almost trivial. A chair, a seating arrangement, a bad view of a stage. If someone had described the situation to me without telling me who was involved, I might have said, "It's only a graduation ceremony. Find another seat and enjoy the day." But it was not the chair that hurt. It was the message attached to it. You are less useful here than someone else. Melissa walked quickly, still holding my elbow, as though she were helping an elderly woman who might lose her balance. I pulled my arm gently away. "I can walk." "I know, Mom." "Then let me." She released me. We were now near the far side of the auditorium where the architecture became inconvenient for anyone trying to see the stage. A wide stone pillar rose from the floor to the balcony. Beside it sat several folding chairs. Melissa stopped at one. "This one should be fine." I looked toward the stage. The podium disappeared almost completely behind the pillar. "Fine for what?" She sighed. "Mom, if I sit there, I won't be able to see Lily receive her diploma. You can lean a little." I turned slowly toward her. "You want your 68-year-old mother leaning around a pillar for 2 hours." Her cheeks flushed. "Can we please not do this here? Do what make a scene?" I lowered my voice. "I haven't raised my voice once." "I know. Then there is no scene." She glanced toward the family section. I followed her eyes. That was when I saw the empty chair beside Ryan's mother. My chair. I knew it because the usher had checked my ticket at the entrance. Family section. Row C. The seat remained empty for perhaps 30 seconds. Then Ryan appeared with Charles Whitman. Ryan smiled broadly, gestured toward the chair, and Charles sat down. Rebecca took the seat beside him. Ryan leaned toward Charles and said something that made both men laugh. I watched from across the room. There are moments when the truth arrives quietly. No shouting, no confession, no dramatic music. Just a man in an expensive suit sitting in the chair your daughter decided he deserved more than you did. I looked back at Melissa. That was my seat. She didn't answer. "Wasn't it? We had to make adjustments. That man is not family. Charles is important to Ryan. And I'm Lily's grandmother." "Of course you are. Then why am I sitting here?" Her face tightened. "Because this is where there's space." "That isn't true. Mom, please." "No, don't say please as though I'm the one creating the problem." A family passed behind us, and Melissa immediately smiled at them. The smile disappeared as soon as they were gone. "I am asking you for one thing." "What thing? To let today be easy." I stared at my daughter. Easy for whom? The question reached my lips, but I did not say it. Instead, I looked down at the cream-colored package in my hands. Thomas's fountain pen was inside. "Use this to write a life that belongs to you." I had written those words to Lily that morning. Now I wondered what example I would set if I allowed someone else's embarrassment to determine whether I stayed for one of the most important moments of her life. "I promised Lily I'd be here," I said. "Then be here." Melissa gestured toward the folding chair. The cruelty of that sentence startled me. "Then be here." As though physical presence were all that mattered. As though being hidden still counted as belonging. I sat. Melissa's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you." I almost asked her whether she had hurt herself. Instead, I placed Lily's gift carefully on my lap. Melissa touched my shoulder. "I'll come find you after the ceremony." I said nothing. She returned to row C. I watched her move through the crowd, greeting people with that polished smile I knew so well. When she reached Ryan, he glanced in my direction. Our eyes met. He looked away first. That told me something too. He knew. Of course he knew. They had discussed it days earlier. "We can control the seating." I remembered standing in their hallway listening to those words. For one reckless moment, I considered getting up. I imagined walking back to row C. I imagined standing beside Charles Whitman and saying, "Excuse me, you're sitting in my seat." What would happen? Charles would probably stand immediately. He had been perfectly pleasant to me at dinner. He might not even know what Melissa and Ryan had done. Then Melissa would be humiliated. Ryan would become angry. People would stare. And Lily's graduation would begin with a family confrontation. I could not do that to her. So I stayed. Around me, the auditorium filled. A woman about my age sat 2 chairs away with her husband. She wore a bright green jacket and held a bouquet of yellow roses. After a few minutes, she leaned toward me. "Then you see from there some of it." She looked at the pillar. "That's a terrible place for a chair." I smiled faintly. "I've had better views." She frowned. "Do you want to switch with me?" The kindness almost broke me. "No, thank you. I don't mind. You're here to watch someone too." "My grandson. My granddaughter." She smiled. "First one graduating, my only one. Then you need to see." I looked toward row C. "No. I'm all right." She followed my gaze but said nothing. That silence was merciful. The lights dimmed slightly. Music began. Families lifted their phones. The side doors opened. The graduating class entered. I leaned left. Blue gowns moved into view. One face, another, another. Then Lily appeared. My heart jumped. She looked older somehow. Not because of the gown, because of the expression on her face. Proud, nervous, ready. For 3 seconds I saw her clearly. Then she passed behind the pillar. I leaned farther. The edge of the stone pressed against my line of sight. When Lily reached her row, I caught another glimpse. She was scanning the audience, looking for someone, looking for me. I raised my hand instinctively. She couldn't see me. My throat tightened. The woman in the green jacket noticed. "Is that her?" "Yes. She's beautiful. She is." I tried leaning farther into the aisle. A staff member politely motioned for me to remain seated because graduates were still entering. I nodded and sat back. The pillar swallowed the stage again. That was the moment I almost left. Not when Melissa moved me. Not when Charles sat in my chair. Not even when Ryan looked away. It was when Lily searched the family section and did not find me. I suddenly understood how the situation might look to her. She had called me that morning. "Promise, I promise." What if she thought I had broken it? I stood halfway. I could move to the back. Surely there was somewhere I could stand and see the stage. Or perhaps I could wait outside and explain afterward. Then Lily turned her head. For one brief second, through the narrow space between the pillar and the aisle, our eyes met. I lifted my hand. Her face changed immediately. She smiled, a real smile. Then she touched 2 fingers to her heart. It was something she had done since childhood. I did it back. That settled everything. I sat down. I would remain behind that pillar for the entire ceremony if necessary. Melissa could hide my chair. She could not make me abandon my granddaughter. The last graduates entered. Applause filled the auditorium. Then several school officials appeared near the main entrance. I recognized Margaret Collins first. She wore a dark red jacket and carried a program. Beside her was William Harris. I was greeting families as he walked toward the front. The woman in green whispered, "That's the principal, I know." William stopped to shake hands with several parents. He spoke briefly with a school board member. Then he continued toward row C. I saw Melissa notice him. Her entire expression brightened. She leaned toward Ryan and whispered something. Ryan stood. Melissa stood beside him. Charles Whitman also rose. I could almost predict what was about to happen. Melissa would introduce William to Charles. Ryan would mention whatever business relationship he hoped to build. Perhaps the principal would say something flattering about Lily. Another useful conversation among useful people. William reached their row. Melissa stepped into the aisle. "Dr. Harris?" He smiled politely. "Mrs. Parker." She gestured toward Charles. "I'd love for you to meet." William's attention shifted. Not to Charles. Past him, across the auditorium, toward me. He stopped. Even from where I sat, I saw the change in his face. His eyes moved from me to the pillar, then to the folding chair, then back toward Melissa. Margaret Collins followed his gaze. Her expression changed too. Melissa noticed. She looked over her shoulder. At me. For the first time that morning she appeared nervous. William said something quietly to Margaret. Then he stepped around Melissa. She turned after him. Dr. Harris. He kept walking. Ryan looked confused. Charles sat back down. William crossed the aisle. Every step brought him closer. I remained seated, Lily's gift resting in my lap. I had no idea what he intended to say. But I knew William Harris well enough to recognize controlled anger when I saw it. He reached the pillar, stopped directly in front of me, looked once more at the obstructed stage. Then he extended his hand. Mrs. Hunter, he said loudly enough for Melissa to hear behind him. Why on earth are you sitting here? And suddenly the chair my daughter had hoped no one important would notice had become the most noticeable seat in the auditorium. For a moment, I did not take William Harris's hand. I simply looked at it, then at him, then past him toward Melissa, who was standing several yards away, with an expression I had never seen on my daughter's face before. Not embarrassment, not yet, confusion. William waited. I placed my hand in his. It's good to see you, Dr. Harris. His grip was warm but firm. Good to see me, he repeated. Edith, I asked why you're sitting here. The woman in the green jacket beside me looked from William to me with open curiosity. Several other people nearby had begun listening too. I could feel the attention spreading. That was exactly what I did not want. It's fine, I said. William glanced at the pillar. No, it isn't. I can see enough. Enough of what the stage. I took one step sideways, apparently testing my view for himself. The pillar blocked nearly half of it. His eyebrows rose. You can't see the podium. I can if I lean. The woman in green made a small sound that might have been a laugh. William looked back at me. You should not have to lean around a pillar to watch your granddaughter graduate. His voice was not loud. That made it more powerful. William was one of those people who became quieter when he was angry. I knew that from our years of occasional meetings about the fund. When he was pleased, he laughed easily. When something bothered him, every word became precise. William, I said softly, please. His eyes met mine. He understood immediately. I was asking him not to create a scene. His expression softened, but only slightly. All right, he said. For 1 second I thought he would let the matter go. Then he straightened. We'll handle this quietly. That did not sound reassuring. Behind him, Melissa was approaching. Her heels clicked sharply against the auditorium floor. Dr. Harris. William turned. Melissa smiled. It was her professional smile. I had seen it at open houses, charity dinners, and the pre-graduation dinner with the Whitmans. Is everything okay? William looked at her. I was just asking Mrs. Hunter why she's sitting behind this pillar. Melissa's smile held. Oh yes. We had a little seating confusion. A confusion? The family section became more crowded than expected. William glanced toward row C. I followed his eyes. There were no mysteries there. Ryan's parents, Ryan's sister, Ryan, Rebecca Whitman, Charles Whitman, 2 other invited guests. The seats were filled, just not exclusively with family. William looked back at Melissa. I see. 2 words, nothing more. But Melissa heard what was inside them. She adjusted the small clutch she was carrying. It's really fine. Mom said she didn't mind. I looked at her. That was not true. I had never said I didn't mind. I had chosen not to fight. Those were not the same thing. William turned toward me. Did you say you didn't mind? Melissa's eyes met mine. For half a second I saw a silent request. Protect me. It was astonishing. My daughter had hidden me behind a pillar, and now she needed me to help make that decision look harmless. I could have exposed her with 1 sentence. Instead, I said I told Melissa I would stay. William understood the distinction. So did Melissa. His jaw tightened. Mrs. Parker, may I see Mrs. Hunter's ticket? Melissa blinked. My ticket, I asked, if you still have it. I opened my purse and handed it to him. He read it. Row C. Melissa spoke quickly. As I said, we had to make adjustments. William handed the ticket back to me. I'm afraid there has been a misunderstanding. Melissa visibly relaxed. Yes, Exactly, William continued, but not the one you think. Her smile disappeared. He turned toward me. Eat, we have a seat reserved for you. I stared at him. What a seat. I have one. He looked at the folding chair. That is not your seat. William, we discussed your attendance. We discussed whether I was attending. Correct. You said nothing about special seating, because Margaret told me you would refuse it. Despite myself, I smiled. That sounds like Margaret. It was. Melissa looked between us. You two know each other. The question, because Margaret told me you would refuse it. Despite myself, I smiled. That sounds like Margaret. It was. Melissa looked between us. You two know each other. The question hung there. William did not answer immediately. Neither did I. Melissa knew I had attended school events over the years. She knew principals recognized parents and grandparents. But this was clearly different. William had called me Edith, not Mrs. Hunter. And I had called him William. I saw her noticing those details one by one. We've met, I said. William gave me a look. It was technically true. It was also wildly incomplete. Before Melissa could ask another question, Margaret Collins joined us. Edith. She looked at my chair, then at the pillar. Oh, absolutely not. I closed my eyes briefly. Margaret, please don't start. I'm not starting anything. Someone else started it. Melissa looked even more confused. Mrs. Collins. Margaret turned. Yes, I'm Melissa Parker. Lily Parker's mother. I know who you are. Margaret was not rude. She simply had no interest in social performance. Melissa extended her hand anyway. We've met briefly at the spring fundraiser. Yes, we have. Margaret shook it, then immediately returned her attention to me. We've been looking for you. I arrived on time. We expected you in the front. The front. Melissa repeated the word before I could. William nodded. Yes. Melissa looked toward the stage. The front family section? No, William said. The front row. The woman in green beside me inhaled audibly. I wished I could disappear. Not behind the pillar. Entirely. I had spent 7 years avoiding exactly this kind of attention. William. I'm perfectly capable of sitting here. I know. Then let me. No. Why? Because the school has reserved a place for you, and we have a program to begin in approximately 12 minutes. That word caught my attention. Program. I narrowed my eyes. What have you done? Margaret suddenly became fascinated by her graduation booklet. William almost smiled. Nothing you haven't earned. I specifically told both of you. Edith Margaret interrupted gently. Not here. I stopped. She was right. This was Lily's graduation. I would not argue with the principal and board chair in the middle of the auditorium. Melissa, however, had heard enough. Earned what nobody answered. She looked at me. Mom, I don't know. That was mostly true. I knew the Hunter Opportunity Fund was approaching its 50th student. I knew Lily's essay had somehow reached William. I knew Margaret had hinted that something special was planned. But I did not know what they intended to do. And judging by the satisfaction Margaret was trying unsuccessfully to hide, I was about to find out. Melissa stepped closer. Why would the school reserve a front row seat for you? Her tone bothered me. Not because she asked. Because she sounded as though the idea itself made no sense. As though front rows belonged naturally to people like Charles Whitman, but required explanation when offered to her mother. William heard it too. His expression cooled. Mrs. Parker, your mother is an honored guest of Richmond Heritage Academy. Melissa stared at him. An honored guest. Yes. For what I saw, William glanced at me. I gave him a warning look. Not yet. He understood. You'll hear during the ceremony, he said. Melissa's face went pale. Behind her, Ryan had finally left row C and was approaching. What's going on? Melissa turned. Apparently my mother has a seat in the front row. Ryan looked at me, then at William. Oh. That single syllable contained complete bewilderment. William extended his hand. Mr. Parker, Dr. Harris. They shook. Ryan recovered faster than Melissa. Well, that's wonderful. We can all move up there. No, William said. Ryan paused. William's tone remained perfectly courteous. The reserved seat is for Mrs. Hunter. Silence. I looked down because I did not want anyone to see how close I was to laughing. Not from cruelty, from the sheer absurdity of it. Minutes earlier, Melissa and Ryan had decided there wasn't room for me in their family row. Now they were discovering there wasn't room for them in mine. William turned back to me. May I escort you? I hesitated. My instinct was still to refuse. I had never created the fund to receive special treatment. But then I looked toward the stage. From where I sat, I could barely see the graduates. Lily was somewhere beyond that pillar. I had promised to watch her graduate. If I remained there out of stubbornness, I would be allowing Melissa's decision to steal part of that moment from both of us. So I picked up Lily's gift. All right, William smiled. Thank you. Margaret offered me her arm dramatically. Shall we? I'm 68. Margaret, not 98. I know, I'm being ceremonial. I laughed despite everything. As I stood, the woman in green touched my hand. Go see your granddaughter. I looked at her. Thank you. She smiled. I told you that you needed to see. I followed William into the aisle. People began turning toward us. Not everyone, but enough. I could feel Melissa behind me. I did not turn around. William walked slowly, matching my pace. As we approached row C, Charles Whitman stood. Mrs. Hunter. He smiled warmly. Good to see you again. Good to see you too, Charles. His eyes moved toward the principal beside me, then toward Melissa. I saw the question forming on his face. He had no idea he was sitting in the seat that had been taken from me. I realized then that Charles had never been the problem. He had simply been useful enough for Melissa to value his presence over mine. William continued forward. We passed row C, past the next row, and the next. With each step, Melissa's carefully arranged social hierarchy seemed to rearrange itself around us. When we reached the front, Margaret pointed to a single empty chair. It sat between her seat and another school board member. On the chair was a printed card, reserved. I sat. From there, the entire stage was visible. Every inch of it. I immediately found Lily among the graduates. She saw me too. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. That smile alone made the walk worthwhile. I placed her gift beneath my chair. As William prepared to go backstage, I caught his sleeve. William. He leaned down. What exactly are you planning? His eyes softened. Something overdue. Before I could demand a better answer, he walked toward the stage. Melissa had returned to row C. She was no longer talking to Charles. She was staring at me. Then she looked down at the graduation program in her hands. I saw her turn one page, then another. She stopped. Even from 10 rows away, I watched her body become perfectly still. Near the center of the page was a heading she had apparently just noticed. Celebrating the Hunter Opportunity Fund. Melissa raised her eyes from the program. She looked toward me. And for the first time that day, I saw something stronger than embarrassment on my daughter's face. Fear. Because she had finally begun to wonder whether the mother she had hidden behind a pillar was someone she had never actually bothered to know. From the front row, I could see everything. That should have been the simplest part of the morning. Instead, I became painfully aware that everyone could see me too. William had returned backstage. Margaret Collins sat on my left, quietly reviewing the graduation program as if nothing unusual had happened. On my right sat another member of the school board, a retired physician named Dr. Samuel Grant, whom I had met only twice. He leaned toward me. Good morning, Mrs. Hunter. Good morning. I'm glad you came. That sentence again. Not congratulations. Not nice to see you. I'm glad you came. I turned toward Margaret. She kept her eyes on the program. What did you two do? I don't know what you mean. You are a terrible liar. I've been told that. Margaret. She finally looked at me. Edith, it's graduation day. Try to enjoy yourself. That is exactly what people say before doing something you specifically asked them not to do. Her mouth twitched. Just watch Lily. I wanted to argue. Then I looked toward the graduates. And there she was. Lily sat 4 rows from the stage, her blue cap slightly crooked, despite what I knew had been at least 20 minutes of Melissa trying to straighten it. She was looking at me. Not toward me. At me. Our eyes met. She pointed subtly toward the front row and mouthed something. I couldn't hear her obviously, but I understood. What happened? I lifted both hands slightly. I don't know. She smiled. Then she looked toward row C. Her smile faded for a moment. I knew exactly what she was trying to understand. She had expected me to be sitting with her family. Now her grandmother was in the front row beside the chair of the school board, while her parents remained 10 rows back. From Lily's perspective, none of it made sense. Frankly, from mine, only slightly more did. The auditorium settled. Late arrivals hurried to their seats. Programs stopped rustling. Phones were lowered. A student quartet finished playing near the stage. I should have been thinking only about Lily. Instead, my mind kept returning to Melissa. I glanced back. She was still staring at the graduation program. Ryan leaned toward her. She pointed to something on the page. He read it. Then he looked toward me. Their expressions were different. Melissa looked unsettled. Ryan looked confused. I knew exactly what they had found. Celebrating the Hunter Opportunity Fund. It was not the first time the fund's name had appeared publicly. The school had mentioned it in annual reports without identifying me. But Melissa had apparently never paid attention. Why would she? Hunter was not an unusual name, and I had never given her a reason to connect it with me. That had been intentional. Still watching her now, I felt something uncomfortable. Not satisfaction, sadness. My daughter knew which designers her clients preferred. She knew the market value of homes in half a dozen Richmond neighborhoods. She knew who sat on which charity board. But she had never once asked me what my charitable planning actually involved. Maybe I had helped create that distance by remaining private. But privacy and invisibility are not the same thing. I had chosen privacy. Melissa had chosen invisibility for me. There was a difference, a large one. Margaret leaned closer. Stop looking backward. I'm watching my daughter discover the graduation program. Let her. She's going to ask questions. She should have asked them years ago. I turned sharply. Margaret's expression remained calm. That was unkind. No, she said. It was accurate. I looked toward the stage again. The school orchestra began the opening piece. Faculty members entered, then administrators. When William appeared, applause rose throughout the auditorium. I took his place near the podium, but did not speak yet. The graduating class stood for the processional conclusion and then sat. I could see Lily perfectly. That alone nearly made me cry. I thought about where I had been sitting 15 minutes earlier, behind stone, leaning sideways, trying to catch pieces of my granddaughter's face. Now there was nothing between us. Lily looked at me again. I touched 2 fingers to my heart. She did the same. Margaret noticed. You two have always done that, since she was little. Thomas, I nodded. He started it. Thomas used to touch 2 fingers to his chest whenever he dropped Lily at preschool. She had copied him. After he died, she began doing it with me. Some traditions are born deliberately. Others survive because people cannot bear to let them disappear. William stepped to the microphone. Good morning. The auditorium answered with applause. Families, friends, faculty, staff, and most importantly, members of the graduating class, welcome. He began with the usual remarks. Years of hard work, the importance of community, gratitude toward teachers and parents. I relaxed slightly. Perhaps Margaret had exaggerated. Perhaps the fund would receive a brief mention and nothing more. Then William said something that made my stomach tighten. Before we celebrate where these students are going, I'd like us to remember something about how any of us arrive anywhere. Margaret closed her program. I looked at her. She stared straight ahead. William continued. No student reaches a graduation stage alone. He spoke about teachers who stayed late, parents who rearranged work schedules, grandparents who provided childcare, coaches, counselors, friends, people whose names would never appear on a diploma. I felt Lily's eyes on me. Then William said, Sometimes the most important people in our lives are the ones whose work remains largely unseen. I knew. I knew exactly where he was going. I whispered Margaret. She whispered back. Behave. I told you both. Not now. William continued before I could finish threatening her. For the past 7 years, this school has been fortunate to have another form of unseen support. The auditorium became quieter. A fund created for one specific purpose to ensure that when sudden hardship strikes a family, a student does not automatically lose the school community that has become part of his or her life. My heart began beating harder. Behind me, I heard the faint sound of pages turning, parents finding the section in their programs. The Hunter Opportunity Fund has helped families facing bereavement, serious illness, job loss, business failure, fire, and other unexpected crises. I stared at William. He had promised not to identify me. Technically, so far, he hadn't. This year, he said the fund reached a remarkable milestone. I closed my eyes for half a second. The 50th student received assistance. Applause began. At first scattered, then stronger. I did not turn around. I did not want anyone studying my face. William waited until the applause settled. For 7 years, the individual responsible for creating this fund has asked for no public recognition. Good, I thought. Keep it that way. No building bears the donor's name. William looked toward me. I stared back with what I hoped was a sufficiently threatening expression. No photograph has appeared in our fundraising materials. A few people laughed lightly. William smiled. And every request we have made to publicly express our gratitude has been politely declined. More laughter, Margaret whispered. Politely is generous. I elbowed her. William continued. This year, however, something happened that made the school board reconsider how we should honor the values behind this gift, without turning generosity into spectacle. I stopped breathing for a moment. A member of our graduating class wrote an essay about what she called unseen kindness. Lily's head lifted. Her expression changed. She knew. Not the secret. The essay. William looked toward the graduates. The essay asked a simple question. How much of our lives are made possible by people whose names we never learn? Lily covered her mouth. Several students looked toward her. My eyes filled. I had heard pieces of the essay. I had not known William intended to use it. The student wrote about teachers, neighbors, parents, strangers, and grandparents. She wrote that perhaps the purest acts of kindness are the ones that would still happen if nobody ever found out who was responsible. That was my sentence. Or rather, Lily's version of it. I remembered her sitting at my kitchen table typing it into her phone. Kindness should still exist when nobody applauds. I swallowed. William paused. This inspired our board to establish something new. Margaret placed her hand over mine. I looked at her. She smiled. Not triumphantly, tenderly. The Hunter Service Award will be presented annually to a graduating student who demonstrates meaningful service without seeking recognition. Applause filled the auditorium again. This time I couldn't stop the tears. Not because my name was attached to an award. I still wasn't entirely pleased about that. But because the fund had become something beyond money. Something Lily had unknowingly helped shape. I looked at her. She was clapping. Then she turned toward me. Her expression slowly changed. She looked from me to William, then toward the program, then back to me. A question appeared in her eyes. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. William raised one hand and the applause quieted. There is one person I want to acknowledge before we continue. My entire body went still. Margaret squeezed my hand. No, I whispered. Yes, she whispered. Margaret, you can yell at us later. William looked directly at me. I could feel hundreds of people following his gaze. Normally, he said I would respect this person's preference to remain anonymous. Normally, my stomach dropped. But after 7 years, 50 students and a graduating class, now being asked to carry the same spirit of service forward, we believe gratitude itself can also teach something. I heard movement behind me. Melissa. I did not turn around. William smiled. Mrs. Edith Hunter, would you please stand? For a second, nobody moved, including me. Then Margaret whispered Edith. I stood slowly. Applause erupted. Not polite applause. The entire auditorium rose. Students, teachers, parents, board members. I saw Lily stand among the graduates. Her hands were over her mouth. Jasmine Reed was beside her crying. And suddenly I understood that Lily was only seconds away from learning the part of the story I had never intended her to know. Behind me sat my daughter, the woman who had moved me because she feared I would not look important enough beside her guests. I finally turned. Melissa was standing too, but she wasn't clapping. She was staring at me as if the person in front of her were a stranger. And perhaps in that moment I was. Because for years, Melissa had looked at my old Buick, my modest home, my practical clothes, and my retired librarian's life, and assumed she knew exactly what they meant. Now hundreds of people were standing for the woman she had hidden behind a pillar, and William Harris had not even revealed the most personal part yet. I had spent 7 years making sure no room ever stood up for me. Now an entire auditorium was on its feet. For several seconds I could not move. The applause came at me from every direction, rolling across the auditorium, until it felt almost physical. Teachers were standing. Parents were standing. Members of the graduating class were standing. Lily was standing too. Her hands had dropped from her mouth, but the disbelief remained on her face. Beside her, Jasmine Reed was crying. I looked toward William Harris. He was clapping. So was Margaret Collins. I leaned toward her. I am going to have words with you. She smiled. I'm counting on it. You promised. I promised not to put your face on a banner. That is an extremely dishonest interpretation of our conversation. She laughed. The applause finally began to settle. I sat. My legs felt strangely weak. Behind me, people returned to their seats. I did not turn toward Melissa. Not yet. William waited until the auditorium became quiet again. Thank you, Mrs. Hunter. I gave him a look that clearly meant you will pay for this later. He smiled as though he understood perfectly. Then his expression became serious. I want to explain why we believed this moment mattered. I wanted to disappear. But this time not because I was ashamed. Because I had never known what to do with public gratitude. Thomas had been better at receiving compliments. Whenever someone praised him, he simply said thank you. I tended to explain why I didn't deserve it. He used to tell me, Edith, sometimes refusing gratitude is just another way of making people argue with you. I could almost hear him saying it. So I stayed quiet. William continued. 7 years ago, Mrs. Hunter came to this school with a question. He paused. She asked what happened to a student when life changed faster than financial aid could. I remembered that first meeting. The small conference room. The cold coffee. William's expression when I slid the number across the table. She did not begin by asking how her name could be recognized. She did not ask where a plaque would be placed. She asked how quickly a family could receive help without being humiliated in the process. The auditorium was completely silent. The Hunter Opportunity Fund was built around that principle. I glanced toward Lily. She was staring at me. William described the fund carefully. No private financial details. No recipient names. Only the kinds of emergencies it had addressed. A parent dying. A serious illness. A family business collapsing. A fire. A sudden job loss. A crisis at home can remove far more than money, he said. It can remove stability, routine friendships, confidence, and sometimes a young person's sense of belonging. The purpose of the Hunter Opportunity Fund has always been simple when possible. Do not let one family emergency take everything at once. My eyes filled again. Those were not my exact words, but they were what Thomas and I had believed. I looked down at my hands. My pearl brooch caught the stage lights. For 1 second I imagined Thomas sitting beside me. He would have hated the attention almost as much as I did. But he would have been proud of the students. That mattered more. William continued. Mrs. Hunter also imposed one unusual condition. I already knew what he was going to say. She insisted that students receiving assistance should not be told her identity. A murmur moved through the audience. She believed gratitude should never become a debt a young person carries through the hallways. I closed my eyes briefly. That was mine. I had said almost exactly that to Margaret 7 years earlier. When I opened my eyes, Lily was crying. Not dramatically, just quietly. She wiped one cheek with the back of her hand. I wanted to go to her. Instead, I remained seated. This was her ceremony. Her moment. Not mine. William looked toward the graduates. The students helped by this fund owe Mrs. Hunter nothing. I appreciated him saying that. They owe the school nothing beyond the same responsibilities expected of every student. The gift was never designed to purchase loyalty or gratitude. It was designed to preserve opportunity. Applause began again, smaller this time, more thoughtful. I allowed myself to breathe. Then William said, "And today the fund has reached 50 students." The number sounded different spoken aloud. 50. I had known it. I had seen the reports. But hearing it in a room filled with young people changed the scale somehow. 50 students had remained in their classrooms because Thomas and I had once chosen not to spend some money on ourselves. 50 families had received one less piece of bad news during some of the worst months of their lives. I thought about the first letter. Thank you for letting my life stay normal when nothing else was normal. My throat tightened. William stepped away from the podium briefly and lifted the graduation program. You'll see that this year the board has established the Hunter Service Award. A screen behind him displayed the name. I shook my head. Margaret whispered, "Too late." I still object. Noted. The purpose of this award, William said, is not to celebrate wealth. That sentence mattered. I sat straighter. It is not about how much someone can give. Service is not measured only in dollars. A student with no money can give time, attention, courage, patience, advocacy, compassion. He looked towards the graduating class. The award will recognize someone who helps others without first asking what recognition will follow. I saw Lily glance at Jasmine. Jasmine reached for her hand. William smiled. And the inspiration for that principle came partly from an essay written by one of today's graduates. Lily froze. Several students turned toward her. Lily Parker. My granddaughter closed her eyes. A ripple of laughter moved through her classmates. William smiled. I promise I will not make you give another speech. Lily laughed through her tears. The auditorium relaxed. William continued. Lily's essay was titled, "The People We Don't See." I had known the working title. I hadn't known she kept it. In it, she wrote about the invisible acts that allow other people to keep moving forward. He did not quote extensively. Instead, he summarized. A teacher staying after school. A neighbor delivering groceries. A grandparent providing childcare. A stranger helping someone through a crisis without expecting repayment. Then William said, what Lily did not know when she wrote that essay was that the anonymous assistance program she described was created by someone sitting very close to her heart. Lily looked directly at me, her lips parted. I saw the exact moment understanding arrived. She shook her head once, not in denial, in amazement. I smiled at her. Her face crumpled. I touched 2 fingers to my heart. She immediately did the same. Around us, hundreds of people were watching. For those few seconds, none of them existed. It was only Lily and me. Then I heard a quiet voice behind me, "Mom, Melissa." I turned slightly. She was leaning forward from several rows back, although she was far too distant for a conversation. Her face had gone pale. Ryan sat beside her holding the graduation program. Charles Whitman was looking from Melissa to me with visible confusion. I turned back toward the stage. William had not finished. There is another reason this year's milestone carries particular meaning. I felt Margaret's hand settle over mine. This time her expression was serious. I knew what was coming. The 50th recipient of assistance from the Hunter Opportunity Fund is a member of this graduating class. The auditorium changed. Students looked at one another. Parents shifted in their seats. Lily turned toward Jasmine. Jasmine was already crying harder. William raised one hand. Out of respect for privacy, we would never identify a recipient without permission. Good. I relaxed slightly. But this student and her family gave us permission this morning to share one part of their story. I looked sharply at Margaret. She nodded. William continued. Earlier this year, an unexpected financial crisis placed one senior's final semester in jeopardy. She had completed years of work. She had been accepted to college. Yet circumstances entirely beyond her control threatened to remove her from this community only months before graduation. Lily was now holding Jasmine's hand with both of hers. Emergency assistance allowed her to remain. Jasmine lowered her head. Her shoulders shook. Lily whispered something to her. Then Lily looked at me. Everything connected. The rainy afternoon, my kitchen table, the untouched lemonade. Grandma, she's worked so hard. The phone call to William. Call Margaret. The anonymous assistance. Lily running into my house days later. I wish I knew who did it. Now she knew. I had never wanted her to. But looking at her face, I understood why William and Margaret had believed this moment could teach something larger than my anonymity. Lily had written about unseen kindness. Without knowing she had witnessed it from both sides. She had been the person asking for help, and I had been the person quietly able to answer. William's voice softened. Sometimes we believe generosity begins with having extraordinary resources. Often it begins much earlier. It begins when someone notices another person's pain and refuses to look away. My eyes moved toward Lily. That part belonged to her, not me. Without Lily caring about Jasmine, I might never have made that particular phone call. The money came from the fund. The compassion had started with my granddaughter. I felt something inside me settle. That was the legacy I wanted. Not my name, not applause. That. Lily understanding that another person's hardship mattered. William moved on to the next portion of the ceremony. The graduates would soon begin receiving diplomas. I thought the attention on me was finally over. Then Margaret leaned close. Now comes the part you'll actually like. What part? Watch your granddaughter. Names began being called. One by one, students crossed the stage. I watched every step Lily took as her row moved closer. No pillar blocked my view. No stranger occupied the seat meant for me. Finally, Lily Parker. I stood before I realized I was doing it. So did Melissa. Lily walked across the stage. She accepted her diploma from William. He said something to her that I couldn't hear. She laughed through tears. Then she turned toward the audience. Her eyes found mine immediately. Not her mother's expensive dress. Not Ryan's important business contact. Not the photographers. Me. She touched 2 fingers to her heart. I answered. And somewhere behind me sat the daughter who had spent years worrying that my modest life might make her look less successful. I wondered whether Melissa finally understood the truth. She had been so busy deciding which parts of me looked impressive that she had never asked what I had actually done. She had hidden me because she thought I could lower her standing in the room. Instead, the principal had asked the entire room to stand for me. But the applause was not the moment that mattered most. The moment that mattered was still coming. Because Lily now knew who had helped Jasmine. What she did with that knowledge would hurt Melissa far more deeply than any public embarrassment ever could. When Lily stepped away from the center of the stage with her diploma in her hand, she was supposed to turn right. Every graduate had been instructed to follow the same route. Walk across the stage, shake William Harris's hand, accept the diploma, pause for the official photograph, then return to the graduate seating area by the stairs on the right. Lily took 3 steps in that direction. Then she stopped. At first I thought something was wrong. William seemed to think so too. He turned slightly toward her. Lily looked at him. Then she looked at me. I knew that expression. I had seen it when she was 6 and decided she was going to jump from the highest diving board at the neighborhood pool, despite Melissa telling her not to. I had seen it when she was 12 and stood up to a girl who was bullying another student. Lily had made a decision. "Oh no," I whispered. Margaret glanced at me. "What?" "She's about to do something." Lily said something quietly to William. He looked toward me. Then he smiled and stepped aside. Instead of continuing toward the stairs, Lily walked toward the edge of the stage. A faculty member hesitated, then moved out of her way. There was a small set of steps leading down near the front row. Lily descended them. A murmur moved through the auditorium. I remained seated because I genuinely had no idea what my granddaughter was doing. Then she came directly toward me. Her diploma was in one hand. Her cap had shifted slightly to the side. Tears were running freely down her face now. Grandma. I stood. She wrapped both arms around me. Not a polite graduation hug, not one designed for photographs. She held me the way she had when she was little and woke from a nightmare at my house. I held her just as tightly. The auditorium disappeared. I forgot about Melissa. I forgot about the principal. I forgot about the applause. I smelled Lily's shampoo and felt the rough fabric of her graduation gown against my cheek. You did it, I whispered. She pulled back just enough to look at me. You did it. I shook my head. This is your graduation. No. Her voice cracked. Jasmine. I knew immediately what she meant. You helped her. I touched Lily's cheek. The fund helped her. You are the fund. No, sweetheart. A fund is bigger than one person. You know what I mean. She hugged me again. The audience began applauding. I closed my eyes. I did not want applause for that moment, but I understood it. People were not applauding money. They were applauding love. When Lily finally stepped back, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her gown. Your mother is going to be furious that you did that with your sleeve. Lily laughed through her tears. Worth it. Go sit down. Yes, ma'am. She turned toward the stage, then stopped. Grandma, yes, thank you. I shook my head. Later. She nodded. William directed her back toward the graduates. As she passed Jasmine's row, Jasmine stood. The two girls hugged. That nearly broke me more than anything else. Jasmine looked toward me afterward. Our eyes met. She pressed one hand to her heart. I gave her a small nod. Nothing more was needed. The ceremony continued. More names were called. More families cheered. But something inside the auditorium had shifted, or perhaps something inside me had. For years I had believed anonymity was the only way to protect the meaning of the fund. Now I wondered whether there were moments when allowing people to see kindness could inspire them to repeat it. William had said service wasn't measured only in money. He was right. Lily had proven that before she even knew the truth. She had seen her friend in trouble and refused to treat it as someone else's problem. That mattered. Eventually, the final diploma was awarded. The graduating class stood. Caps flew into the air. The auditorium erupted. Parents cheered. Students screamed. Someone behind me blew an air horn despite the school specifically asking families not to bring them. Margaret jumped. I laughed. Very dignified. I hate those things. You survived. Barely. We stood as the graduates began filing out. I looked back toward row C. Melissa was still there. She wasn't smiling. Ryan was speaking quietly to Charles Whitman, but Charles seemed more interested in looking toward me. Rebecca gave me a warm smile when our eyes met. I smiled back. Then I saw Melissa watching that exchange. Something about her expression made my heart ache. For all her mistakes, she was still my daughter. The little girl who once wrote that her mother helped children find stories was still somewhere inside that polished 42-year-old woman. But loving someone does not mean pretending they have not hurt you. I had learned that lesson slowly. After the ceremony, the graduates were directed toward the courtyard for photographs. Families poured through the doors. The June sun was bright, and the entire lawn became a sea of blue gowns, flowers, cameras, and people calling one another's names. I found Lily near a large oak tree. She was standing with Jasmine. The moment Jasmine saw me, she froze. Her mother stood beside her. Denise Reed. I recognized her immediately. She looked tired but beautiful in a lavender dress. Lily whispered something. Jasmine walked toward me. Mrs. Hunter. Hello, Jasmine. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then she began crying again. Oh, sweetheart. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. My mom didn't know either. That was the idea. Denise approached. She held both of my hands. I don't even know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Yes, I do. No. I squeezed her hands. You had a terrible year. Your daughter deserved one thing in her life to remain stable, that's all. Denise shook her head. You don't understand what it meant. I think I do. No, I mean, her voice broke. She looked toward Jasmine. When the school called, I had already packed some of her things. I thought I was going to have to tell her she couldn't come back Monday. Jasmine covered her mouth. Apparently, she had not known that detail. Denise continued. Then they said there was help. No application campaign, no public fundraiser, no one asking us to tell our story in front of strangers. Just help. I felt tears coming again. That is exactly what it was supposed to be. Denise hugged me. When she stepped away, Lily was watching me. Her expression was different now. Not because she suddenly believed I was important. That would have hurt. Lily had always believed I mattered. What had changed was that she now understood a part of my life I had kept hidden. Grandma, she said, how many what students? You heard Dr. Harris, 50 approximately. Her eyes widened. You helped 50 families, the fund did. Stop saying the fund like it's a separate person. It has a board. Grandma. Jasmine laughed. For a few minutes, everything felt light. Then Melissa arrived. Ryan was beside her. I saw Lily's posture change immediately. Congratulations, sweetheart, Melissa said. She hugged her daughter. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Mom. Ryan hugged Lily next. That little detour from the stage wasn't exactly in rehearsal. Lily smiled. I know. It was memorable. I wanted to hug Grandma. Ryan glanced toward me. Yes, we gathered that. His tone was not cruel, but it carried discomfort. Melissa looked at me. Mom, can we talk? Lily immediately said. About what? Just something between Grandma and me. I knew what Melissa wanted. Answers. How much money? How long? Why hadn't I told her? Why did the principal know me? Why did Margaret Collins know me? Questions about the fund. Questions about the life she had never bothered to ask about. But this was not the moment. Later, I said. Melissa looked surprised. Mom, today belongs to Lily. Those were almost the same words Melissa had used earlier, but I did not say them to silence her. I said them because I meant them. Lily lifted her diploma. Pictures. Yes, I said. Pictures. We began gathering beneath the oak tree. Ryan's parents joined us, then his sister. Charles and Rebecca Whitman passed nearby and congratulated Lily. Charles shook my hand. Mrs. Hunter, what you've done for the school is extraordinary. Thank you. Melissa heard him. I watched her face tighten. The photographer began arranging everyone. Parents behind the graduate, grandparents on either side. I moved toward Lily. She grabbed my hand. No, Grandma stays right here. She positioned me beside her. Melissa stood on Lily's other side. For the photograph, we all smiled. Anyone looking at that picture later might have believed the morning had been perfect. Families are good at producing photographs that hide what happened 5 minutes earlier. After several pictures, Lily looked toward me. Grandma, where were you sitting before Dr. Harris brought you to the front? The question was casual. Melissa became completely still. I looked at her. She looked at me. Why, I asked Lily. I saw you near the side when we walked in. She pointed toward the auditorium. Weren't you behind that big pillar? Melissa answered before I could. There was a seating mix-up. Lily frowned. But Grandma's ticket was in the family section. No one spoke. Ryan looked down. Lily turned toward her mother. What kind of mix-up? Melissa forced a smile. It doesn't matter now. It matters if Grandma couldn't see. She got moved, after the principal found her. The happiness disappeared from Lily's face. She looked at me, then at Melissa. And for the first time that day, my granddaughter began to understand that my seat behind the pillar had not been an accident. Lily looked from me to her mother still holding her diploma against her chest. What kind of mix-up? Melissa gave the same smile she used when a conversation had wandered somewhere she did not want it to go. It was nothing, sweetheart. It didn't look like nothing. Lily, I'm asking a question. The courtyard around us remained full of celebration. Families were taking photographs beneath the oak trees. Graduates were calling to friends. Someone nearby had opened a bottle of sparkling cider, and a group of teenagers screamed when the foam spilled over. Our little circle, however, had become completely still. Ryan adjusted his tie. I recognized the gesture. He did it when he was uncomfortable. Maybe we should do the rest of the pictures first, he said. Lily ignored him. Grandma, I wished she had not asked. Not because I wanted to protect Melissa from consequences, because this was supposed to be one of the happiest days of Lily's life. I did not want her graduation memory divided into before she learned what her mother had done and after. There was a seating issue, I said carefully. Lily stared at me. You're doing that thing. What thing? The thing where you make something sound smaller because you don't want people fighting. I almost smiled. She knew me too well. Melissa stepped in. Your grandmother's seat was changed. Then Dr. Harris moved her. It worked out. Why was it changed? Because we had guests. Lily looked toward the auditorium. Everybody had guests. Business guests, Ryan said. Melissa shot him a look. Too late. Lily turned toward her father. What does that mean? Ryan hesitated. Charles and Rebecca were attending and we wanted them seated with us. So no one answered. Lily looked at me, then at Melissa. Where was Grandma supposed to sit? Melissa exhaled sharply. This is becoming ridiculous. Where on the side? Behind the pillar, silence. Lily's expression changed. Until that moment she had been confused. Now she was hurt. You put Grandma behind a pillar so Mr. Whitman could sit with you. It was not like that. It sounds exactly like that. Lily, lower your voice. That sentence did what nothing else could have done. Lily became quieter, not calmer, quieter. Why? Melissa looked around. Several people were close enough to overhear. Can we discuss this somewhere private, fine? There was a small reception room just inside the administration building where families could leave bags and flowers during the ceremony. We walked there together. I hated every step. Lily went first. Melissa followed. Ryan and I came behind them. Before we reached the door, someone called my name. Edith. I turned. It was the woman in the green jacket who had offered to switch seats with me. She was standing beside a tall young man in a graduation gown. This is my grandson, she said proudly. I smiled. Congratulations. The young man thanked me. Then the woman looked toward Melissa. Oh, I'm glad everything worked out with your seat. Melissa stiffened. The woman continued innocently. I felt terrible seeing you tucked behind that column. Lily stopped. The woman realized too late that she had stepped into something complicated. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean. It's all right, I told her. She nodded and hurried away with her grandson. Lily turned toward her mother. You really did put her there. Melissa closed her eyes. Inside. We entered the reception room. Ryan shut the door. For several seconds nobody spoke. Lily placed her diploma carefully on a table. Then she turned. I want someone to tell me exactly what happened. Melissa crossed her arms. I changed the seating arrangement. Why, we had several important guests. There it was. Important. I saw Lily hear the word. So Grandma wasn't important, I did not say that. You didn't have to. Lily, this is more complicated than you understand. How? Your father and I have professional relationships. Graduation brought together people we rarely have access to in one place. I stared at my daughter. Even now she was explaining logistics instead of acknowledging cruelty. Charles is someone your father has been trying to work with, she continued. And I have clients connected to several families here. Seating people together matters. Lily's face hardened. More than Grandma seeing me graduate, she saw you. Because the principal moved her. Melissa looked toward me. Mom could have told me she couldn't see. I actually laughed. Not loudly, just once. Melissa's eyes flashed. What I did tell you. You said you could barely see. Yes, I thought you meant part of the stage. I was behind a stone pillar, Melissa. Ryan rubbed his forehead. Okay, we made a bad call. Melissa turned toward him. Yes, we. At least he had the courage to say it. Lily looked at her father. You knew. Ryan nodded. I suggested moving some seats around. You suggested moving Grandma. I didn't think it would be that bad. Lily shook her head slowly. Neither of you thought it would be bad because neither of you expected anyone important to notice. That sentence landed harder than shouting would have. Melissa stared at her daughter. That is unfair. Is it? Yes. Then tell me why Grandma was the person who had to move. Melissa opened her mouth, closed it. Lily continued. Why not Grandpa Parker? Ryan's face changed. Lily. Why not Aunt Jennifer? Why not one of Dad's relatives? No answer. Why Grandma? Melissa looked toward the window. I knew the answer. I had known it for years. But hearing Lily force the question into the room made it impossible to hide behind seating arrangements. Because you thought she would embarrass you, Lily said. Melissa turned sharply. That's not true. Then what is true? I wanted today to go smoothly. How does Grandma sitting with us stop that she doesn't? Then why? Melissa's voice rose. Because sometimes your grandmother doesn't understand certain environments. I felt something inside me go cold. Lily stared at her. What does that mean? It means nothing. No. You said it. Explain it. Melissa looked at me. For once I did not rescue her. She had spent years wrapping her shame in polite language. Practical, appropriate, professional, important. Now her daughter was asking her to translate. Melissa struggled. Your grandmother is very comfortable being herself. I almost admired the sentence. It was such a polished way of saying I refuse to perform. Lily frowned. That sounds like a compliment. It can be, but you don't mean it as one. Melissa sat down. Her shoulders dropped. I grew up differently from you. What does that have to do with Grandma? A lot. No, Mom. It doesn't. You don't understand what it's like to walk into a room and immediately know everyone else has more than you. I watched her. There it was. Not the whole truth, but the door to it. Lily remained standing. You're talking about money. I'm talking about how people see you. And Grandma makes people see you differently. Melissa did not answer. Lily's eyes filled. That was the moment my anger finally surfaced. Not when I was moved, not when Charles sat in my seat. When I saw my granddaughter realizing that her mother had spent years being ashamed of the woman Lily loved, I stood beside her. Enough. Melissa looked at me. Mom. No. Lily asked a simple question. I kept my voice calm. What exactly about me embarrasses you? Melissa's face crumpled for half a second. Then she rebuilt it. Nothing. Then say it while looking at me. She did. I'm not embarrassed by you. Melissa, I'm not. 3 nights ago I heard you and Ryan talking in the kitchen. Ryan went still. Melissa's face drained of color. I continued. You said I talked too much about the old days. Ryan said you could control the seating. Mom, I left without my glasses because I didn't want you to know I heard you. Lily looked at her mother in disbelief. You planned this? Melissa covered her face with one hand. I was under pressure. From who? Lily asked. Myself, apparently. The words burst out of her. Silence followed. For the first time, Melissa sounded less angry than exhausted. She lowered her hand. I wanted everything to look perfect. Lily stared at her. And Grandma didn't fit. Melissa began crying. Not elegantly, not quietly. The polished woman from the courtyard disappeared. I don't know, she whispered. Lily's own tears returned. Then she asked the question Melissa could no longer escape. What exactly about Grandma embarrasses you? Melissa looked at me, at my navy dress, at Thomas's pearl brooch, at the mother she had tried to move out of sight, and for the first time in years, she stopped searching for a polite answer. My whole life, she whispered. I've been terrified people would look at where I came from and decide I didn't belong with them. I felt the anger inside me soften into something sadder. Melissa wiped her face. You remind me of where I came from, Mom. Lily looked horrified. But I understood something she did not yet understand. My daughter had finally stopped talking about a chair. The pillar had only been the symptom. The real wound had begun decades earlier when a little girl from an ordinary family decided that success meant escaping every visible reminder of the people who had sacrificed to help her reach it. And now, with nowhere left to hide, Melissa was finally going to tell us why. For several seconds after Melissa said it, nobody moved. You remind me of where I came from, Mom. Those words should have made me angry. Instead, they took me back 30 years. Not to the successful woman sitting in front of me in an expensive cream dress. To a little girl standing in our kitchen in second-hand sneakers. Melissa had been 11 when she first asked me whether we were poor. I remembered the moment clearly. She had come home from a classmate's birthday party and placed her backpack beside the kitchen table. Yes. Are we poor? I had been cutting carrots. The question surprised me. Why are you asking? Courtney's house has 3 bathrooms. I smiled. We have 2. She has one in her bedroom. Then Courtney has very convenient plumbing. Melissa didn't laugh. Her mom said they're going skiing for Christmas. We're going to Aunt Diane's. That's not the same. No, it wasn't. I put down the knife. We have a home. We have food. Your father and I have jobs. We can pay our bills. So no, I would not call us poor. Are we rich? Also no. She thought about that. What are we lucky enough? At the time, I believed the answer satisfied her. Looking at my daughter now, I realized perhaps it never had. Melissa sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap. Lily stood near the table, her graduation gown open slightly at the neck. Ryan remained near the door. No one interrupted. Finally, Melissa spoke. When I was growing up, I always knew what other people had. I sat opposite her. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That it bothered you this much? She laughed bitterly. What would I have said, Mom? Why can't we have a bigger house, Dad? Why do you drive an old truck? You could have. And then you would have felt bad. Maybe. That's why. Lily frowned. But Grandma and Grandpa paid for everything you needed. I know. Then what were you ashamed of? Melissa looked at her daughter. You grew up differently. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. She wiped her cheeks. You never had to think about whether your shoes looked cheaper than everyone else's. You never had to pretend you didn't want to go somewhere because you knew your parents couldn't afford it. You never watched your friends get cars for their 16th birthdays, while your mother told you she'd help you save for one. I remembered that too. Melissa had wanted a red convertible. Thomas found her a used Honda. She cried privately when she thought we couldn't hear. Then she drove that Honda for 6 years. I hated myself for caring, Melissa said. That was the worst part. You and Dad were good parents. I knew you were good parents. So every time I wanted more, I felt ungrateful. Her voice softened. When I got into real estate, suddenly I was surrounded by people who had everything I used to stare at. Large houses, luxury cars, country clubs, vacation homes, designer kitchens. The first time I sold $1 million property, I felt like I had crossed some invisible line. Ryan lowered his eyes. Melissa continued. Then I realized crossing it once wasn't enough. I had to prove I belonged there every day. I listened carefully. For the first time, I could see the machinery behind years of small insults. The coat, the shoes, the Buick, the kitchen cabinets, the vague introductions. None of them had actually been about me. They were about Melissa constantly checking whether the door to her new world might close behind her. That's why you changed, Grandma Lily asked. Melissa looked at her. I didn't think of it like that. But you did. Yes. The honesty surprised all of us. Melissa turned toward me. When you came to events in that old car, I noticed. I know. When you wore the same dress twice, I noticed. I know. When you told stories about public school or Dad working overtime, I worried people would hear that and think. She stopped. Think what I asked. That I wasn't one of them. There it was. The sentence beneath everything. I leaned back. And you thought if you changed me, you could change your history. Melissa began crying again. I don't know. I think you do. She looked at me. I kept my voice gentle. You weren't ashamed because I failed you. Her face tightened. You were ashamed because I reminded you what it cost to get you where you wanted to go. She looked down. Mom, your father worked overtime for that summer program you attended. Her head lifted. What you never knew. No, he didn't want you to. I smiled sadly. You thought we simply had the money. Melissa stared at me. He worked 6 weeks of extra shifts, Why didn't you tell me? Because sacrifice isn't a loan. Parents shouldn't hand their children an invoice for childhood. Her lips trembled. But you remembered. Of course I remembered. I thought about Thomas coming home exhausted, eating dinner at nearly 10 at night. He was proud of you. I touched the pearl brooch. He never resented 1 hour of it. Melissa covered her mouth. Lily sat beside her mother now, not hugging her, not yet, but closer. I continued. When you went to college, we chose not to remodel the kitchen. Melissa looked at me. When your first apartment required a deposit, you didn't have your father sold some equipment he barely used. I thought he didn't want it anymore. He didn't want it as much as he wanted you to start your life without credit card debt. She shook her head. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because we didn't want gratitude. The word hung between us. It was almost painfully appropriate after the ceremony. We wanted you to have choices. I paused. But somewhere along the way, you began looking at the evidence of those sacrifices and seeing embarrassment instead. Melissa cried silently. I did not enjoy it. That mattered. This was not revenge. There was no pleasure in watching my daughter understand how badly she had hurt me. Only grief. Ryan finally stepped away from the door. I need to say something. We looked at him. He sat beside Melissa. This isn't all on her. Melissa shook her head. Ryan, no. He looked at me. I encouraged it. I waited. When Melissa and I first started attending business events, I knew she was insecure about fitting in. He rubbed his hands together. I told her perception mattered. It does in your work, I said. Yes. But I let that idea spread into everything. He admitted joking about my Buick deliberately. Not because he hated the car. Because he believed I should upgrade my appearance to match Melissa's professional image. I thought I was helping, by making me feel inadequate. He winced. When you say it that way, how else should I say it? He nodded. You're right. Lily looked at her father. And the seat Ryan swallowed. That was my suggestion. Melissa turned toward him. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He looked at me. I told Melissa we could move you and put Charles with us. Why me? He struggled. Finally he answered. Because I thought you'd tolerate it. That hurt differently. Not embarrassment. Exploitation. They had chosen me partly because I was the person least likely to make a scene. My kindness had made me convenient. I nodded slowly. Thank you for finally saying it. Ryan looked ashamed. Lily stood. I need some air. Melissa reached toward her. Lily. She stepped back. I love you, Mom. Melissa froze. But I don't like what you did. I know. And I don't understand how you could spend years worrying that Grandma wasn't impressive enough. She gestured toward the auditorium. Everyone stood for her. Melissa flinched. I immediately spoke. Lily, no. She looked at me. Your mother's mistake was not failing to know I had a scholarship fund. But no. I stood. If the principal had never recognized me, putting me behind that pillar would still have been wrong. Silence. I needed Lily to understand that. This could not become the story about a woman who deserved respect because she secretly had money. That would teach exactly the wrong lesson. I did not become more worthy when William announced the fund, I said. I was just as worthy when I was sitting behind that pillar. Lily's expression softened. So was every grandmother in that auditorium. So was every custodian cleaning the building tonight. So is every person who never has a room stand and applaud for them. Melissa looked at me. Tears filled her eyes again. I'm sorry. The words were quiet, but something about them was different. No explanation followed. No mention of pressure. No important guests. No seating confusion. Just I'm sorry, Mom. I believed she meant it. That did not erase what happened. I hear you, I said. She looked surprised that I didn't say it was okay. I wasn't ready to. Perhaps I never would be ready to call it okay. Forgiveness and permission are different things. I had spent too many years confusing them. Outside we heard graduates laughing in the courtyard. Life was continuing. Lily picked up her diploma. We should go back. Melissa nodded. Before opening the door, Lily looked at her mother. One more thing. What if Grandma hadn't started that fund? Would you still be sorry? Melissa closed her eyes. Then she looked directly at me. Yes. I studied her face. For the first time that day, I believed she understood the question. Because the lesson was never supposed to be that Melissa had hidden an important woman. It was that she had decided another human being needed to be important before she deserved to be seen. And as we stepped back into the sunlight, I knew an apology would not be enough. If my relationship with my daughter was going to survive, something between us had to change. Not temporarily, not until the embarrassment faded, permanently. An apology can be sincere and still not be enough. That was something I had learned late in life. When I was younger, I thought forgiveness meant returning everything to the way it had been before someone hurt you. You apologize. I say it's fine. We hug. The uncomfortable moment disappears. But some moments should not disappear. They should change the rules. When we stepped back into the graduation courtyard, the sunlight felt almost too bright after the small reception room. Lily walked ahead of us. She needed space. I understood. At 18, she had just discovered something painful about her parents and something unexpected about her grandmother within the same hour. That was a great deal for anyone to absorb. Ryan followed several steps behind her. Melissa remained beside me. For perhaps 30 seconds neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, "Mom, I really am sorry." "I know. Do you?" "Yes." She looked relieved. Too relieved. So I added, "That doesn't mean everything is fixed." Her face changed. "I know. I'm not sure you do." She stopped walking. People flowed around us toward the lawn. "Then tell me." I looked at my daughter. That was the first useful thing she had said since we entered the reception room. Not explain it to me, not forgive me, tell me. So I did. "I will never attend another event where you feel you need to manage how I look." She blinked. "Mom," you asked. "I know. No more dresses you think are more appropriate. No more suggestions about my car because you're worried who might see it. No more introductions where you reduce 34 years of my work to 'she's retired' because librarian doesn't sound impressive enough." Melissa lowered her eyes. "I didn't realize you noticed all of that." "Of course I noticed. Why didn't you say something?" That question irritated me more than I expected, because every time I let something go, I thought I was protecting our relationship. I paused. Instead, I was teaching you that I would tolerate it. Melissa said nothing. I continued. "And I will never again accept an invitation where I have to earn the right to belong once I arrive. You shouldn't have to." "No, I understand. I hope you do." She wiped beneath one eye. "What else?" I almost smiled. "What do you mean you said there were rules? What else?" I appreciated that, so I gave her the next one. "Lily does not become the person who fixes this." Melissa glanced toward her daughter. "I would never ask her to. Not directly." "What does that mean?" "It means you don't tell her how sad you are that I'm distant, so she'll encourage me to call. You don't ask her whether I'm still angry. You don't make her carry messages between us." Melissa nodded slowly. "This is between you and me." "Yes." "And Ryan." "Yes." She looked toward her husband. "He owes you an apology too." "He does. He already admitted admission and apology are not the same thing." Melissa nodded again. "You're right." We resumed walking. Near the oak tree, several graduates were taking photographs. Lily had joined Jasmine. I watched them laugh at something. My chest loosened. That was what I wanted from the rest of the day. Not punishment, not a public reckoning. Lily deserved to remember joy. Melissa and I could deal with the rest later. Then she asked the question I had expected ever since William revealed the Hunter Opportunity Fund. "How much money is in it?" I looked at her. Her face immediately flushed. "I'm sorry. That sounded terrible." "It did. I didn't mean—" She stopped herself. "Good. No excuses." She tried again. "I'm trying to understand how I knew nothing about something that important in your life." "That's a better question. Why didn't you tell me?" I considered my answer. "Partly because I wanted the fund private." But I'm your daughter. Yes, you could have told me. I could have. Why didn't you? I looked toward Lily. Because over time I stopped trusting the way you thought about money. Melissa absorbed that quietly. I continued. You began evaluating people by what they owned, who they knew, where they lived. I didn't want my finances to become another number you used to decide what I was worth. Her eyes filled. Did you think I would try to take your money? No. That surprised her. Then what? I thought you might respect me more if you knew I had it. She stared at me. And I didn't want respect that depended on a bank balance. That hurt her. I could see it. But some truths are painful because they arrive after years of evidence. I never wanted your money, she said. I believe you. Then, this isn't about theft, Melissa. I softened my voice. It's about value. She looked toward the auditorium. I put a business contact in your seat. Yes. Because I thought he mattered more in that room. Yes. She covered her eyes briefly. I hate hearing it said that plainly. Plain language is useful. She gave a sad laugh. You always said that. I was a librarian. Words mattered. For the first time since the confrontation, we both smiled. Only slightly. But it was something. Ryan approached. Can I talk to you? Melissa stepped away. I'm going to check on Lily. Ryan waited until she was gone. Then he put his hands into his pockets. I owe you an apology. Yes, you do. He almost smiled. I deserve that. I waited. I'm sorry I suggested moving your seat. He looked directly at me. I'm also sorry for the jokes about your car and your house. I said nothing. I thought I was teasing. No, you didn't. He exhaled. No, not entirely. That honesty mattered. I thought Melissa would feel more comfortable if you looked more like the people she worked with. And did you ever wonder whether I wanted to know? There's the problem. He nodded. You're right. I studied him. Ryan was not a monster. Neither was Melissa. That would have made everything easier. They were people who had allowed ambition and insecurity to distort their behavior until cruelty felt like practicality. Ordinary people can do tremendous damage while believing they are simply managing circumstances. I accept the apology, I said. He looked relieved. But why do you assume there's a but? Because I've known you 20 years. Fair. But accepting your apology doesn't mean we return to normal tomorrow. I understand. And I will not financially rescue choices you and Melissa make for appearances. His expression changed. I'm not asking you to. Good. I didn't even know about your money. That's precisely why I'm saying it now. I knew enough about their lifestyle to see the pattern. Bigger house, luxury vacations, private clubs, constant renovations. Melissa earned well. Ryan earned well. But people who spend their lives proving they are successful can become prisoners of the proof. If you ever face genuine hardship, I said you are family. I will listen, but I will not pay for status. Ryan nodded. That's fair. No, it's a boundary. It doesn't need to be fair to you. He actually laughed. Also fair. We returned to the others. For the rest of the afternoon, we focused on Lily. Photographs, flowers, friends, teachers. Jasmine and Denise joined us for several pictures. William eventually came outside. I pointed at him. You. He raised both hands. I'm busy. You won't be busy forever. Margaret appeared behind him. Run, William. He laughed and disappeared into the crowd. I would forgive them too, eventually. Lily came to me carrying the cream-colored package. You almost forgot my gift. I was waiting for the right moment. She opened it carefully. When she saw Thomas's fountain pen, she stopped breathing for a second. Is this Grandpa's? Yes. She touched it as though it were fragile glass. Grandma, there's a note. She read it. Use this to write a life that belongs to you. Lily cried again. So much for waterproof mascara, Melissa said softly. Lily looked at her mother. For one uncertain moment, I wondered what would happen. Then Lily gave a small smile. Yours isn't doing much better. Melissa laughed through her tears. It was not reconciliation. Not yet. But it was love surviving disappointment. That mattered. Before we left, Melissa approached me beside my Buick. "Are we going to be okay?" I looked at her. "I don't know." Her face fell. I touched her arm. "But I want us to be." She nodded. "So do I. That means things have to change. They will. Don't promise me." She looked confused. "Show me." I got into my car. As I drove away, I looked once in the rearview mirror. Melissa stood beside Ryan. Lily was between them, holding Thomas's pen. For years I had believed keeping peace was the same as keeping a family together. That afternoon taught me otherwise. Sometimes peace requires silence, but healing requires truth. I had forgiven my daughter enough to leave the door open. Now it was Melissa's responsibility to decide whether she would walk through that door differently. And several months later, at another school ceremony, I would discover whether she had actually listened. This time, there would be another empty chair waiting for me. But there would be no pillar. 4 months after Lily's graduation, another invitation from Richmond Heritage Academy arrived in my mailbox. This one made me suspicious immediately. The envelope was thick, expensive paper, my full name written in careful calligraphy. I carried it into the kitchen, placed it on the table, and stared at it while the kettle boiled. After what William and Margaret had done at graduation, I had learned not to trust elegant envelopes from that school. When I finally opened it, the first line confirmed my fears. "Mrs. Edith Hunter, Richmond Heritage Academy, requests the honor of your presence at the inaugural presentation of the Hunter Service Award." I groaned. Then I laughed. "Margaret called that evening. You received it. You knew I would. Are you coming? Are there banners? Number photographs of me? Not unless you voluntarily stand in front of a camera. Speeches about me." A pause. "Margaret, the award needs context. I knew it." She laughed. "Edith, this is not about your money." That made me listen. The students nominated candidates themselves. Faculty reviewed the nominations. The recipient has done something genuinely meaningful. Then talk about the student. We will. Not me. Mostly. I sighed. "You are exhausting. And yet you love me. I tolerate you. Will you come?" I looked around my kitchen. Thomas's photograph still sat on the bookshelf. Beside it was a newer photograph from graduation. Lily in her blue gown. Me beside her. Melissa on the other side. We were all smiling. The photograph looked uncomplicated. "Life rarely is. I'll come," I said. The month since graduation had not magically repaired my relationship with Melissa. I was grateful for that. Quick reconciliation might have felt better, but it would not have been honest. For the first few weeks, Melissa called too often. Not because she needed anything, because guilt had made her anxious. "Just checking on you. I'm fine." "Do you need anything?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." After the fourth call in 1 week, I finally said, "Melissa, you don't have to perform being a good daughter." Silence. "I'm trying." "I know. Is that wrong?" "No. But trying isn't the same as panicking." She laughed nervously. "What am I supposed to do? Be my daughter? I don't know what that means right now. That may be part of the problem." She became quieter after that. The calls became less frequent, more genuine. She stopped asking whether I needed anything and started telling me ordinary things. A client had brought a dog to a showing, and the dog had escaped into the neighbor's yard. Ryan had ruined dinner. She had found an old photograph of Thomas wearing shorts nobody should have allowed him to own. Normal conversation returned slowly. But some things changed. Melissa never again commented on my Buick. She stopped buying me clothing I had not requested. The first time we attended lunch together after graduation, she introduced me to a colleague. "This is my mother, Edith. She was a public school librarian for 34 years. Was. Not just retired." I noticed. I didn't praise her. Some changes should become normal without applause. Ryan changed too. His jokes became less sharp. He listened more. Once while visiting my house, he stood in the kitchen and looked at the cabinets. I raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead. What?" "Say something about vintage." He smiled. "I was going to say they're in remarkably good condition." "Coward." We both laughed. Then there was Lily. She left for college in August. The day before she moved into her dorm, she came to my house alone. Thomas's fountain pen was clipped inside her notebook. I use it for important things, she told me. What qualifies as important things I want to remember? Before leaving, she hugged me. I signed up for a volunteer program. What kind? College access mentoring. I looked at her. She immediately pointed at me. Don't get emotional. I'm not. You're doing the face. What face? The grandma face. I laughed. That was when I understood something. The Hunter Opportunity Fund might eventually spend every dollar it held. Buildings could change names, awards could disappear. But if Lily carried forward the belief that opportunity should be protected and kindness did not require an audience, then Thomas and I had created something no account balance could measure. On the afternoon of the Hunter Service Awards ceremony, I drove myself to the school. In the Buick. Naturally. I wore a simple burgundy dress and Thomas's pearl brooch. Nobody approved the outfit beforehand. That alone felt wonderful. The ceremony was smaller than graduation. Students, faculty, several parents, board members, and representatives from local service organizations gathered in the auditorium. I entered through the main doors. For 1 second, my body remembered. The pillar, the folding chair, the feeling of being moved aside. Then I saw Melissa. She was standing near the center aisle. No Ryan, no clients, no people she needed to impress. Just my daughter. She smiled. You came. I said I would. I know. She pointed toward the second row. I saved you a seat. I looked. There were 2 empty chairs beside each other. One for her, one for me. Something tightened in my chest. Melissa must have seen it. I checked, she said. Checked what the view? I laughed. She did too. Nothing blocking it, not unless someone extremely tall sits in front of us. We walked toward the seats. She didn't guide me, didn't choose for me, didn't manage me. She simply walked beside me. We sat. For several minutes we watched students enter. Then I noticed a badge attached to Melissa's handbag, Richmond Reads Volunteer. I pointed at it. What's that? She looked embarrassed. Nothing. That is clearly something. I started volunteering. We're a literacy program. I stared at her. Don't make a big deal out of it. I wasn't planning to. Good. How long? About 6 weeks. What do you do? Mostly reading support with elementary students. She smiled. There's a 3rd-grade girl who thinks punctuation is a conspiracy. She may be right. Melissa laughed. Then her expression softened. I wanted to understand. Understand what your life. I said nothing. She looked toward the stage. I spent years thinking your career was something small because it didn't pay much. Her voice became quieter. Then I sat with a little boy for 40 minutes while he tried to read 1 page without giving up. She swallowed. When he finally finished it, you would have thought he'd won the Super Bowl. I smiled. Yes. Melissa looked at me. I understand a little better now. That meant more to me than another apology. William began the ceremony. To his credit, he kept my biography short. The first Hunter Service Award went to a senior who had organized a peer tutoring program for students caring for younger siblings after school. She had done most of the work anonymously through faculty referrals. When she accepted the award, she looked terrified by the attention. I liked her immediately. Williams spoke about service. Not wealth, not status. Service. When the ceremony ended, students gathered in the lobby. Melissa and I remained seated for a moment. You know, she said I thought about graduation a lot. So did I. I keep seeing that chair. I waited. I don't mean the front row chair. I knew. The one behind the pillar. Yes. She looked at her hands. I think the worst part is knowing you would have stayed there. What do you mean you wouldn't have embarrassed me? No. You would have sat there for 2 hours, missed half the ceremony, and never told Lily what I did. Probably. That makes me feel worse. Good. She looked at me startled. I smiled gently. Some things should make us uncomfortable, Melissa. Otherwise we repeat them. She nodded. I don't want to repeat it. Then don't. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. We sat that way for a while. Not completely healed, but honest. That was better. After leaving the school, I made one more stop. Thomas's cemetery was 20 minutes away. The afternoon had turned cool. I carried no flowers because Thomas had once told me flowers at graves were mostly for the living. I stood in front of his stone. Well, I said they named an award after us. The wind moved through the trees. You would hate that. I smiled. Lily is volunteering now, my eyes filled, and Melissa is trying. That was important too. She got lost for a while. I touched the pearl brooch. But I think she's finding her way back. Before leaving, I told him about the 50th student, about Jasmine, about Lily's essay, about the service award. Then I told him about the pillar. I imagined his reaction. He would have been furious for approximately 10 minutes. Then he would have asked whether Melissa apologized. That was Thomas. Justice first, then repair. Driving home, I thought about the two chairs, the one behind the pillar, and the one Melissa had saved beside her 4 months later. The first chair said, "You are inconvenient here." The second said, "I want you beside me." No applause could have meant more. At 68, I had finally learned that dignity does not come from being invited to the front row. It does not come from having your name attached to a fund. It does not come from wealth, professional titles, expensive clothes, or being recognized by important people. Dignity is knowing you still have value when someone else refuses to see it. At Lily's graduation, my daughter tried to decide where I belonged. For years, I had quietly allowed her to make smaller versions of that decision. What I should wear, what I should drive, what parts of my life were impressive enough to mention. I would never allow that again. But I also learned something else. People can fail us without being permanently lost. Melissa hurt me, deeply. I forgave her, but forgiveness did not erase the pillar. It gave her the opportunity to build something different beside it. And she did, slowly, imperfectly, honestly. The greatest thing Thomas and I left behind was never the Hunter Opportunity Fund. It was not 50 tuition payments. It was not an award. It was a granddaughter who saw someone hurting and asked what she could do. Lily had inherited the part of us that mattered. As I pulled into my driveway that evening, my phone buzzed. A message from her. "Grandma used Grandpa's pen today." Underneath was a photograph of a notebook page. At the top, Lily had written, "The kind of person I want to become." I stood beside my old Buick and smiled. Months earlier, I had sat behind a pillar, believing I had been pushed outside my own family's picture. Now I understood